Chapter 24:13. Time passed slowly, but Chu Li did not find a good solution. Spiritual attacks were rare, and there were few other methods. However, with the wheel pagoda, he could use other methods. The power of the wheel pagoda was magical. He was trying to use the power of the wheel pagoda to slowly erode the power outside of Jing Yu's soul. It was silent, and dripping water could penetrate a stone. He could feel that he would suffer a fatal backlash if he did so. He could not withstand the backlash now, so he could only use softness to overcome strength. Unless he cultivated the spirit cultivation technique to a certain level, his soul would be strong enough to withstand this power without fear. Right now, he had yet to reach such a level. He was unconsciously afraid of the Izumo sect that could exert such a fatal power. After a while, Chu Li shook his head and disappeared. The next moment, he appeared on a mountain not far from the heaven-devouring sect. Under the observation of the omniscient mirror, the protective formation of the heaven-devouring sect was not activated. He could see the heaven-devouring sect from top to bottom. The disciples were cultivating and minding their own business, and there were many masters peeping outside the sect. Chu Li shook his head, disdainful of those spying people. They did not really want to attack the heaven-devouring sect, but they wanted to watch the battle between the heaven-devouring sect and the flying heaven sect. They wanted to take advantage of the situation. If the flying heaven-devouring sect and the heaven-devouring sect did not fight, they would not act rashly. He searched for the strongest force of the heaven-devouring sect and built the wheel pagoda on the mountain peak to form the 9-cauldron heaven suppression array. Then, he went to another mountain peak and built 40 wheel pagoda in one go before stopping. All of this happened without a sound, and no one in the surroundings noticed it. With the wheel pagoda, he was confident that even if he died, he could escape and resurrect at any time. Flying Heaven Sect's Wu Yuanxi is here. Chu Li suddenly appeared at the foot of the heaven-devouring sect and shouted. His voice was calm, but it echoed throughout the heaven-devouring sect. The tranquility of the heaven-devouring sect was broken. The disciples who were cultivating rushed to the basilica at the highest point and came to the front of the basilica, ready to face the enemy. Only the basilica remained silent. Chu Li said again, Wu Yuanxi is here. Please meet sect leader Ming of the Izumo sect. The heaven-devouring sect did not have a sect leader yet, but the sect leader of the Izumo sect, Ming Yuchuan, was here. I didn't expect you to recognize me. A clear and bright voice soared into the sky, and then immediately became low. Please come in. Chu Li saw the door of the basilica open, and a tall and burly middle-aged man walked out. He had handsome eyebrows and bright eyes, and his heroic spirit was overwhelming. His imposing aura shot up to the sky, but he was calm and collected, full of righteousness. Their eyes seemed to meet in the air. He looked up at the sky as if he could see the omniscient mirror. Chu Li replied loudly, All right. He fluttered up the mountain and entered the heaven-devouring sect in the blink of an eye. He walked up the stone steps in the middle and kept going up. Finally, under the angry gazes of hundreds of people, he slowly came to the bottom of the steps of the main hall. The disciples of the heaven-devouring sect made a path for him to enter. On the steps stood Ming Yuchuan and 8 white-robed elders. Their sleeves were all lined with gold. They were the inheritance elders of the heaven-devouring sect. Chu Li secretly sighed at the number of inheritance elders in the heaven-devouring sect. It was really different from other sections. With so many inheritance elders, there was no need to worry about the heaven-devouring sect losing its inheritance. Even if one was killed, there would be another. It was very difficult to kill them all. Ming Yuchuan stood with his hands behind his back, his white robe fluttering. His temperament was very similar to Chu Li's, except that one was older and the other younger. When the two stood together, they gave off a very similar feeling. Chu Li looked like Ming Yuchuan when he was young, and Ming Yuchuan looked like Chu Li decades or hundreds of years later. When Chu Li saw him, he knew that he was a strong opponent. He was as calm as the sea and abyss, unfathomable, and his spirit was not inferior to Chu Li's. He was afraid that his fortuitous encounters were not inferior to Chu Li's, or even better. Looking at him was like looking at Song Wuji. Song Wuji was wilder, and Ming Yuchuan was calmer. Their temperaments were more similar. When Ming Yuchuan saw Chu Li, his heart trembled. He knew that Chu Li was a strong opponent, and at the same time, a surging killing intent rose in him. He wanted to kill Chu Li. This killing intent was not because of what Chu Li did to the disciples of the heaven-devouring sect and Izumo sect, but because he was similar. He did not want to see his other self grow and become a threat. He looked down at Chu Li and said calmly, "You're Wu Yuanxi?" Chu Li nodded. "That's me." "That can't be right. This isn't your original appearance," Ming Yuchuan said coldly. Chu Li smiled. "So what if it's my original appearance?" Ming Yuchuan said calmly. "As a sect leader, you still dare not show your true face, so you must have some shocking secret. I'm a little interested and want to find out." Chu Li said, "Sect leader Ming, don't you want to avenge Jing Yu? He's not skilled, so it's not a big deal that he fell in your hands." Ming Yuchuan said calmly, "If he survived this disaster, he would be able to ascend. It's a disaster that everyone who ascends must go through. Unfortunately, he didn't survive, so he can only blame his fate." Chu Li frowned. He could not sense Ming Yuchuan's emotional fluctuations. The omniscient mirror and manifestation of nature restoration had lost their effect. It was like facing a vast ocean, knowing that there must be an undercurrent surging under the calm surface, but he could not see through it. "Sect leader Ming, please avenge us," a young disciple shouted. "Yes, kill him. Kill him." The other disciples spoke one after another. They were all talking at once, making a racket. As they spoke, the disciples stepped forward and closed in on Chu Li. Their fierce, murderous intent surged like waves. The disciples of the heaven-devouring sect devoured the vitality of others, so their murderous intent was unusually fierce. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. He ignored the disciples around him, and said to Ming Yuchuan, "If all the disciples of the heaven-devouring sect are like this, then there's really nothing to worry about." These words caused the disciples to shout even louder. They wanted to attack but were afraid. Ming Yuchuan waved his hand. The disciples of the heaven-devouring sect stopped. Ming Yuchuan waved his hand and said, "You may leave." "Sect leader Ming." The disciples glared at Chu Li. Ming Yuchuan said calmly, "Everyone, don't worry. I know what to do." The crowd stared at Chu Li unwillingly and slowly retreated. Chu Li smiled. "Sect leader Ming, are you also the sect leader of the heaven-devouring sect?" "Yes." Ming Yuchuan nodded. "The heaven-devouring sect is without a leader. I'm duty-bound. Sect leader Wu, you don't have to sow discord. Both sects are like one family. There's no distinction between us." Chu Li said, "Then the Izumo sect will also take care of the grudges of the heaven-devouring sect, including those who were killed by the heaven-devouring sect for no reason." Ming Yuchuan said sternly, "Sect leader Wu, why are you slandering us? The heaven-devouring sect has its own rules. They will never kill good people. Those who are killed must have deserved it. They're not innocent." He was righteous and upright, exuding an unquestionable aura. Chu Li laughed. "Ha ha." Ming Yuchuan raised his eyebrows and said loudly, "Sect leader Wu, this is the rule of both sections. No disciple dares to violate it. If they do, they'll be severely punished or even lose their lives. If that really happened, the disciple would already be dead." Chu Li smiled and shook his head. He did not believe it. However, his probing was to find Ming Yuchuan's flaws. The invisible confrontation was carried out in secret. Chapter 24:14. Chu Li nodded calmly. "Since sect leader Ming can make the decision, then let's talk about the war between the two sections. Are you really going to declare war against the Flying Heaven sect?" "A declaration of war?" Mingyu Chuan was slightly stunned. Music. Novel 30,000 yuan. Chu Li said, Zheng Yu is representing the Heaven-Devouring Sect and the Flying Heaven Sect to declare war against the Flying Heaven Sect. I'm here to ask if they want to declare war. Zheng Yu said that? Mingyu Chuan frowned and slowly shook his head, saying, Looks like he has taken matters into his own hands. But since he has said so, then let's fight. Chu Li could not help but laugh. Looks like sect leader Ming doesn't take our Flying Heaven sect seriously. Does sect master Wu think that I should put the Flying Heaven sect in my eyes? Mingyu Chuan smiled and said disapprovingly, Flying Heaven sect is just an ordinary second-rate sect. Compared to our two sects, it's nothing. Chu Li nodded. It's true that the Flying Heaven sect's strength can't be compared to the other two sects, but what about me, the sect leader? As he spoke, he took out the sky demon blade and lightly slashed out. His figure disappeared in an instant, and in the next moment, the tip of the saber had already struck Mingyu Chuan. Mingyu Chuan shook with a pring, white light radiating from his body as if a sun had risen. On the other hand, the heavenly demonic blade silently drew a white light across his shoulder. When it reappeared, it had already returned to its scabbard. Chu Li stood 20 feet away, calmly looking at Mingyu Chuan with a smile on his face. Mingyu Chuan's expression was solemn as he looked down at his left shoulder. There was already a tear in the white robe on his left shoulder, and the skin and flesh on his shoulder were torn, but there was no blood. The sky demon blade had directly swallowed up the blood that had flowed out, and it had also prevented the wound from healing. Even someone as powerful as Mingyu Chuan could not heal the wound. If it wasn't for the sky devil blade's strangeness, with Mingyu Chuan's cultivation base, his wound would have already healed. It would only take a day for him to fully recover. Mingyu Chuan raised his head to look at Chu Li and said in a deep voice, Great blade technique. Chu Li smiled and said, The heavenly demon blade technique is quite powerful. He didn't expect that the power of the sky devil blade would reach such a level. It was all thanks to the help of the soul-refining art. The power of the sky devil blade was far greater than when he fought against Song Wuji. No wonder. Mingyu Chuan's gaze fell on the sky devil blade again. Unfortunately, the sky devil blade was already sheathed, so he could not see through it. Furthermore, the blade had been drawn too quickly, and it was shrouded in darkness, so Mingyu Chuan could not see the appearance of the sky devil blade clearly. This made him even more curious. Chu Li asked, Can sect leader Ming block the heavenly demonic blade? As soon as he finished speaking, he drew his saber and waved it again. He suddenly disappeared and appeared behind Mingyu Chuan in the next moment. The sky devil blade struck Mingyu Chuan's left arm again. The bright jade river suddenly shone brightly. A powerful force shook the surroundings, and the void seemed to distort. It was able to suppress all void-shifting powers and forcefully lock the void. It could be said to be an extremely powerful protective force. Unfortunately, the sky demon saber ignored this vast power and silently slashed across Mingyu Chuan's left arm. It struck the same spot as before, and the wound that was originally curled up was still curled up. It looked no different from before, and the injury did not worsen. Only Mingyu Chuan knew that the sky demon saber's power that was about to be devoured had once again gained the upper hand. The sky demon saber's power invaded again, and the two forces merged, suppressing his inner energy. The cloud slashing power was extremely powerful, and it could devour all foreign forces. The sky demon blade technique was mysterious, and so was the inner energy of the sky demon blade technique. However, the cloud slashing power was still devoured when it was almost perfected. As long as there was enough time, it could be devoured completely and turned into the cloud slashing power. However, Chu Li managed to stop the sky demon blade technique's power from being devoured in time. Instead, he turned around to devour the cloud slashing power. What was even more shocking was that he could not avoid this attack. It was traceless and could not be sensed. It appeared so suddenly, and did not give him a chance to react. The 2 slashes were on his shoulders. What if it was his neck? When he thought of this, he felt a chill run down his spine. Although he did not use his trump card, he was no match for such a strange blade technique. Before he could find the weakness of the Sky Demon blade technique, he should not fight Wu Yuanxi to the death. Otherwise, his life would be in danger. He had to go back and look up some ancient books. He remembered that he had read about the Sky Demon blade technique in one of them. There might be a weakness of the Sky Demon blade technique. Finding the weakness would be the moment he dealt with Wu Yuanxi. Chu Li retreated again and looked at Ming Yuchuan calmly. Did sect leader Ming say anything? Ming Yuchuan did not even look at his wound. He said lightly, "What a great Sky Demon blade technique." Chu Li smiled. He suddenly disappeared in a flash, and the next time, he slashed Ming Yuchuan again. This time, Ming Yuchuan did not even use his protective energy. His body twisted and he suddenly disappeared. Unfortunately, he was still hit by Chu Li in the next moment at the same place. The surging power once again entered Ming Yuchuan's body, and it clashed with the cloud slashing power. The power of the cloud slashing power was shocking. Ming Yuchuan was originally at a disadvantage, but this slash had quietly turned the situation around and regained the upper hand. After Chu Li's slash, he was at a disadvantage again. Ming Yuchuan's expression was solemn. He did not expect the Sky Demon blade technique to be so strange. Chu Li waved his blade again. Ming Yuchuan dodged again, but he was still evaded. Chu Li waved his blade 9 times in a row, and each time, he accurately slashed at the original spot. The Sky Demon blade could cut through iron like mud, but it did not cut off Ming Yuchuan's arm. Wave after wave of inner energy entered. Chu Li's desire for the cloud slashing power grew. This was because after the 9 blade forces entered his body and merged together, its power skyrocketed, forming an unparalleled devouring force. However, it was forcefully suppressed by the cloud slashing power. The power of the cloud slashing power was indeed shocking. He felt that the power of the 9 blade forces combined was not inferior to Song Wuji's spirit-devouring scripture. If the cloud slashing power could block it, it could block the spirit-devouring scripture, and even counter it. With the cloud slashing power and the god-slaying thunder sword, he could completely suppress Song Wuji. Killing Song Wuji would be considered as fulfilling his promise. He could also train himself, and he might even become a great enlightened master. Ming Yuchuan's expression became more solemn, and he was more afraid of Chu Li. Sect leader Ming, I heard that a lot of the cloud slashing power has been leaked. Chu Li stood with his blade and shook his head. I also cultivated a cloud slashing power. Cloud slashing power? Ming Yuchuan smiled. All the cloud slashing power that has been circulated outside our fate. The more you cultivate it, the more you will go astray. Chu Li said, I don't believe it. I feel that the cloud slashing power is exquisite beyond compare. It should be real. He stared at Ming Yuchuan's mind. Ming Yuchuan's spirit was full, and his soul energy was strong. However, the heavenly demonic blade technique was strange and could restrain it, but the heavenly demonic blade technique could not restrain Song Wuji. Ming Yuchuan chuckled. Everyone who obtained the cloud slashing power thinks that they obtained the true inheritance, and that it is not fake. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. These fake cloud slashing power were also created with great effort? Of course. As long as there is a chance to cultivate the real cloud slashing power, these fake cloud slashing power will be of great help. Otherwise, only death awaits. Ming Yuchuan nodded. Chu Li said, Terminator. He quickly recited the mnemonic incantation and heart technique of the cloud slashing power. At the same time, the heavenly demonic blade's energy rampaged in Ming Yuchuan's wound. Ming Yuchuan was busy dealing with the heavenly demonic blade's energy, and had no time to care about Chu Li's heart technique of the cloud slashing power. However, his mind naturally reflected the real heart technique. Chapter 24:15. Chu Li breathed a sigh of relief. His efforts were not in vain as he finally obtained the real cloud-slashing power. It was more mysterious than he expected, and he could not wait to start cultivating it. He closed fist saluted calmly. This is the heart technique of the cloud-slashing power. How does it compare to the real heart technique? Ming Yuchuan resisted the strange energy from his wound and said slowly, Sect leader Wu has cultivated the cloud-slashing power, but I advise you not to cultivate it or your life will be in danger. Chu Li nodded. All right. What do you think about the ceasefire between the two sects? Ming Yuchuan looked at him seriously. The others stared at Chu Li with unfriendly expressions. Chu Li only looked at Ming Yuchuan quietly with a smile. Sigh. Ming Yuchuan suddenly sighed. I can't do anything about it because I'm not as skilled as others. Forget it. Chu Li's smile widened. Ming Yuchuan said, the heaven-devouring sect and Izumo sect will not fight with the flying heaven sect. Chu Li smiled. Thank you very much. Sect leader Ming is wise, I admire you. Ming Yuchuan smiled helplessly and said, I only admire sect leader Wu's heavenly demon blade technique. With this technique, sect leader Wu can dominate the world and treat all heroes as nothing. Chu Li said, Sect leader Ming, you flatter me. The heavenly demon blade technique is still young. Ming Yuchuan looked at him. But sect leader Wu must be careful. The heavenly demon blade technique is too extreme. It's powerful but it's easily restrained. Chu Li nodded. Yes, thank you for your reminder. Sect leader Ming, you can try to find a way to restrain it. I'll wait and see. All right. Once I find it, I'll personally visit the Flying Heaven sect. Ming Yuchuan said. I'll be waiting. Chu Li smiled. He suddenly disappeared without a trace. Sect leader, why don't you keep him here? One of the elders asked. The heavenly demon blade technique is too amazing. I'm not confident. Ming Yuchuan waved his hand and said. But he killed Lil Zheng and the others. We have to avenge this. The elder said. It's not that we don't want to, but we can't now. Ming Yuchuan frowned and said slowly, there must be a way to restrain the Sky Devil Blade art. As long as we find it, it will be the time when Wu Yuanci dies. Yes. The few legacy elders nodded. Chu Li returned to the Flying Heaven sect and informed them of the heaven-devouring sect and Izumo sect's decision. Hu Tianlai and the others were finally relieved, but they did not let down their guard. The sect protection formation was still activated to prevent anyone from attacking the mountain. On the other hand, Chu Li announced that he would go into isolated cultivation. In the next instant, he appeared in the Godly King Palace. Lu Yurong was meditating in the hall. Her clothes were as white as snow and her skin was as smooth as jade. She was like a jade beauty. Seeing him appear, Lu Yurong rolled her eyes at him and closed her eyes again to meditate. Chu Li shook his head and laughed. He could feel her bitterness, but he felt helpless and could only sigh to himself. She was so beautiful, just like a white jade beauty. He also wanted to embrace her in his arms and love her, but he always felt that there was a lack of passion and passion. He felt an inexplicable sense of guilt towards Shao Qi if they were to directly merge like this. When he was with Sun Mingyue, he was forced by the situation so he could face her calmly. However, it was not the same for Lu Yurong. If he also merged with her, it would be difficult for him to overcome the barrier in his heart. Chu Li sighed and sat opposite Lu Yurong. They were so close that they could hear each other's breath. Lu Yurong glanced at him with her bright eyes. Her breath smelled like orchids. At her level, her body was pure and flawless, and her body fragrance was faint. Chu Li said, "Your martial arts has improved greatly. Congratulations." Lu Yurong's cultivation level had improved greatly, and her speed of improvement was beyond imagination. Lu Yurong said, "You've become the leader of the Flying Heaven sect?" Chu Li nodded. Lu Yurong asked, "What do you want?" Unfortunately, the Flying Heaven sect is not an ancient sect. Chu Li frowned. The Flying Heaven sect belonged to one of the 12 forms of the heavenly demon, but it was not an ancient sect. It did not have a long history, so it did not have a strong foundation. There were not as many martial arts and antique studies as expected. Lu Yurong said, "You originally wanted to see the Flying Heaven sect's secrets?" Chu Li nodded. "It would be best if I could learn the Enlightened God Descent and learn the sect's secret." "Have you learned the Enlightened God Descent now?" Lu Yurong scoffed. Chu Li smiled. "Yes. It's enough to learn this skill," Lu Yurong said. With the Enlightened God Descent, his cultivation level would double, and it could save his life in a critical moment. As for the position of sect leader, it did not matter to Chu Li. In fact, it was a huge burden. Chu Li shook his head. He originally wanted to see the Flying Heaven sect's secrets, but it was not an ancient sect. There were few secrets, but it was not without help. Many of them could only be mastered by the sect leader, and normal martial arts masters would not know about them. Lu Yurong chuckled and scoffed. "You've learned the Enlightened God Descent and you're still not satisfied?" Chu Li said, "I learned it, but I don't dare to use it." Lu Yurong asked, "Why?" Chu Li frowned and scoffed. "I can sense danger. Once I use the Enlightened God Descent, my life will be in danger." Lu Yurong looked at him and pondered. "Could it be that the rumors are fake? Or Zhao Lingfeng wants to harm you?" Chu Li shook his head. "I suspect it's because of the Spirit Beast Heart technique." Lu Yurong said, "The Spirit Beast Heart technique is indeed a taboo. It's possible that the Enlightened Master hates the Spirit Beast Heart technique. If that's the case, you've learned the Enlightened God Descent but don't dare to use it." Chu Li nodded helplessly. Lu Yurong pursed her lips and smiled. The hall suddenly lit up. Chu Li stared at her. "Is there a way to solve this?" Lu Yurong said, "Unless I get rid of the Spirit Beast Heart technique." Chu Li frowned and pondered. He had thought of using the life and death scripture to block the existence of the Spirit Beast Heart technique, but his intuition told him that it was still dangerous. Could it be that his current level of the life and death scripture was too low to block the Enlightened Master's gaze? Lu Yurong said, "You haven't found a way?" "Not now." Chu Li shook his head. It was extremely difficult to upgrade the life and death scripture. He had been cultivating for so long and had upgraded many skills to a very high level, but the life and death scripture was the only one that progressed slowly. It seemed like he had only upgraded 3 levels. More importantly, it seemed like the only way to upgrade the life and death scripture was to be enlightened during life and death situations. However, the life and death scripture and the Wheel of Reincarnation pagoda could protect him from death, so it was difficult for him to experience great terror, and his understanding of life and death was not deep. Lu Yurong said, "Do you really want to take on the burden of the Flying Heaven faction?" She understood Chu Li's temperament. Once he took on the position of the Flying Heaven faction leader, he would take on the responsibility of the sect leader. He would not do things half-heartedly, which would be a huge burden. He was not the real Wu Yuanxi, nor was he the real heavenly demon. Chu Li said, "The Flying Heaven faction leader is actually very relaxed, so it doesn't matter if he takes on the responsibility. With his identity as the Flying Heaven faction leader, he could obtain more martial arts experience and help. The power of a faction was not something that could be achieved by one person. He might not be able to use it now, but it might be useful in the future." Lu Yurong nodded. "Then you have to be careful of the Great Dream faction." Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Lu Yurong said, "The Great Dream faction has the intention of unifying the heavenly demonic realm." Chu Li said, "How ambitious!" Outsiders don't know the background of the Great Dream faction. It is a branch of the ancient Forbidden Heaven sect, and the Forbidden Heaven sect used to unify the heavenly demonic realm. Lu Yurong said calmly, "That's why the Great Dream faction has this great ambition." Chapter 24:16. Chu Li frowned. Do they really want to unify the heavenly demonic realm? He had never thought of such a thing. Heavenly demons did whatever they wanted. Even if they were restricted by the sect rules, they could not hide their freedom. Therefore, they were always free and unrestrained. Since they were born in a sect, they had to follow the sect rules. They would not follow other rules unless their cultivation level was higher than theirs. It was almost impossible to unify the heavenly demonic realm. If it was not their own sect, they would not be convinced no matter how strong they were unless they had experienced their strength. To unify the heavenly demonic realm, one must have a higher level of martial arts than the heavenly demonic realm. Among all the sects in the heavenly demonic realm, even the heaven-devouring sect, they were only slightly better. It was not because their martial arts were better and unstoppable. It was impossible to unify the heavenly demonic realm. It was the same for the Great Dream sect. Their martial arts were close to his nature restoration manifestation, but they could not reach the peak. Therefore, they could not convince all the heavenly demons. Instead, they envied them for their luck. Lu Yurong said, "Don't underestimate the Great Dream sect. They are ambitious and keep a low profile. The Great Dream sect that others know is not the real Great Dream sect. You have to be more careful." Chu Li frowned and pondered. He was thinking about the conflict with the heaven-devouring sect. The earlier conflict was still manageable, but the later conflict seemed to be instigated by someone else. Others could not detect it, but it could not hide from his sharp intuition. He also suspected that Ming Yuchuan was instigated because of the Izumo sect. Now, it seemed that it was not Ming Yuchuan. It was most likely the Great Dream sect or Qing Yuan's doing. Lu Yurong saw that he was deep in thought and was relieved. Once he was alert, it would be difficult to plot against him. Chu Li suddenly looked up at Lu Yurong. Lu Yurong's bright eyes wandered, and she turned her head to avoid his gaze. Chu Li said, "You're so well informed. Do you have some special method?" He was surprised that Lu Yurong was more well informed than him, the leader of the Flying Heaven sect. She knew information that he did not know. She was the Azura Realm's divine lady. It was unbelievable. Lu Yurong scoffed, "This is our divine lady's method." Chu Li said, "There are almost no Azuras in the heavenly demonic realm, only heavenly demons. Could it be that some heavenly demons have secretly sided with the Azuras?" Lu Yurong said, "I can't tell you that." Chu Li knew that he had guessed correctly. If Lu Yurong was so well informed, then the status of these heavenly demons who had turned to Azura would not be low. This was a shocking matter. Fortunately, he was Chu Li and not the real Wu Yuanxi, or else he would have been terrified. Lu Yurong said, "I'm not as powerful as you think." Chu Li shook his head and said, "The Azura realm is so far-sighted, it's really scary. What are they trying to do? Could it be that you want to control the Omen realm?" "To protect myself," Lu Yurong said, "the heavenly demon is the bane of the Azura power technique. If I don't know the heavenly demon's movements, how could I protect myself? Think about I Ching Song from the Great Dream sect. You can imagine how much the heavenly demon sect wants to kill us Azura state." Chu Li replied, "That's because Azura has gone overboard. The Azuras only went overboard with the Celestials, but they never did anything to the sky demons," Lu Yurong said lightly. Chu Li nodded slowly. That was true. The Azura realm and the heavenly demon realm did not have any major conflict. The relationship between the two realms was complicated, and it was hard to say. Although I Ching Song was a genius, it was hard for him to achieve anything. The biggest advantage of Lu Yurong becoming the goddess was that she restricted the Azura from going to the lower realm. Once the lower realm was peaceful, there was no telling what would happen. Once there were no external enemies, there would be internal strife. This was human nature. Lu Yurong said, "Are you going to look for Song Wuji again?" Chu Li said, "I'll go into isolation to cultivate the cloud-slashing power first, then I'll look for Song Wuji. This time, I'll have a higher chance. Last time, he was only escaping and Song Wuji did not show his true abilities. Once he cultivated the cloud-slashing power, he would be able to face Song Wuji calmly and have the confidence to kill him. Lu Yurong frowned and said, Song Wuji is also in isolation. Chu Li's expression was solemn as he frowned and pondered. Song Wuji was also a genius, one that was not inferior to him. Moreover, he had been the master of the Thunder Pool for many years. He had accumulated a lot and his cultivation level was high. Chu Li was able to gain enlightenment during the battle with him. Song Wuji might be able to do the same. Song Wuji must have gained some enlightenment during his isolation. When he comes out, he will not be the original Song Wuji. Chu Li had no confidence in killing him. Lu Yurong said, Song Wuji has not fully displayed his strength. He is being restrained by you. I'm afraid that his isolation this time is to target his weakness. After fixing his weakness, she shook her head and sighed as she spoke. Chu Li smiled. If he's in isolation, then so be it. I'll do it too. When I come out, we'll see who's better. All right, Lu Yurong said. Cultivate here, it's the safest. Chu Li nodded. Chu Li had only been in isolation for 3 days. His cloud slashing power had improved by leaps and bounds. It went from the 3rd level to the 6th level in one go. It was as easy as water flowing into a canal. The original cloud slashing power was harder to cultivate. The real cloud slashing power was more exquisite and easier to cultivate. One morning, while he was cultivating the cloud slashing power, his mind suddenly moved and he woke up. He looked at Lu Yurong who was sitting opposite him. The bright morning sun shone through the window, illuminating the basilica. Lu Yurong sat under the bright window, her skin like white jade. She sat still like guanine. Chu Li opened his eyes and sighed. I have to go back to the Flying Heavens sect. Lu Yurong opened her eyes and nodded. Chu Li nodded and suddenly disappeared. The next moment, he appeared in the basilica of the Flying Heavens sect. He asked, What's the matter? Hu Tianlai pushed the door open and closed fist saluted. Sect leader. Hall leader Hu, please take a seat. Chu Li extended his hand and said solemnly. The cloud slashing power was still circulating. Hu Tianlai's expression was solemn. He said slowly, 10 of our disciples are missing. Chu Li frowned. When did this happen? 2 days ago, the sect opened and the disciples left the mountain, Hu Tianlai said. Then, something happened the next day. There was no news for a day. After investigating, there were no clues. Chu Li asked, No news for 2 days. Yes, Hu Tianlai said. They are definitely missing. Chu Li frowned. No clues at all? No, this is the strangest thing. Hu Tianlai's expression was terrible. He gritted his teeth. I'm afraid that these 10 disciples, he shook his head and sighed. Without leaving any clues, it meant that they wanted to silence them. If it was just a robbery, they would have left some traces to force the Flying Heavens sect to know. However, the 10 disciples had disappeared without a trace. It was very likely that they were dead. Chu Li closed his eyes and moved his fingers. He slowly opened his eyes. Yes, they are still alive. Hu Tianlai was excited. Sect leader, are you proficient in the divination technique? Chu Li smiled. Otherwise, how could I have snatched the divine demon herb? Hu Tianlai was overjoyed. Sect leader, can you divine their location? Chapter 24:17. Hu Tianlai revealed a disappointed look. Chu Li said, But I can confirm one thing, they were captured together. Hu Tianlai asked, Heaven-devouring sect? Chu Li shook his head. Not heaven-devouring sect. Could it be Izumo sect? Hu Tianlai frowned. Or Sky Wind sect. But I'm afraid it's impossible for them to capture 10 of our disciples in one go without a sound. Chu Li shook his head thoughtfully. None of them. Hu Tianlai was surprised. We don't have any other opponents. Could it be that they're trying to fish in troubled waters? Chu Li suddenly waved his hand. Hu Tianlai quickly shut his mouth and stared at him. Chu Li closed his eyes and moved his fingers. Suddenly, he made a strange hand seal. Hu Tianlai suddenly felt a vast power descend from the sky and fall directly on Chu Li's body. Suddenly, Chu Li seemed to disappear in front of his eyes. He was clearly sitting in front of Hu Tianlai and was even shimmering like the stars in the night sky. After a while, the shimmering starlight gradually dissipated. Chu Li opened his eyes and looked at Hu Tianlai. Clan leader sang, "Please bring 10 demon god guards here." "Yes." Hu Tianlai subconsciously stood up and closed fist saluted. Chu Li's body emitted a vast power as if it came from the ancient times or the distant galaxy. It was vast and boundless. Hu Tianlai unconsciously admired him and had the urge to kneel on the ground. Chu Li waved his hand. Hu Tianlai turned and strode out of the basilica. A moment later, Sang Qingyun and 10 middle-aged men stood outside the basilica. Chu Li said, "Clan leader Sang, come in." Sang Qingyun calmly walked forward and closed fist saluted. "Sect leader, what are your orders?" "Follow me." Chu Li said, "There might be a fierce battle." Sang Qingyun's eyes lit up as if he was starving and saw delicious food. "All right." Chu Li said to Hu Tianlai, who was walking over, "Send a message to the disciples to be alert and not to act alone." "Yes." Hu Tianlai said. Chu Li turned and said, "Clan leader Sang, let's go." Sang Qingyun said, "Demon god guards." 10 middle-aged men appeared in front of him in a flash. Chu Li nodded and suddenly disappeared. Sang Qingyun and the 10 middle-aged men also disappeared. In the next moment they appeared in a valley. Chu Li waved his hand and gestured for them to be careful. Everyone understood. They held their breaths and condensed their energy, concealing their presence and traces as they retreated into the forest at the side. Sang Qingyun was by Chu Li's side, inquiring with her eyes where they were. Chu Li whispered, "At the foot of the heaven-devouring Sex mountain." Sang Qingyun's face changed slightly, his eyes flickering. Chu Li shook his head and whispered, "It's not a sneak attack on the heaven-devouring sect. We'll know soon enough." Sang Qingyun nodded and did not ask any more questions. A moment later, the sound of clothes fluttering could be heard. 10 black-clothed men appeared in the valley, each carrying a person. The people in the hands of these 10 black-clothed men were completely silent, as if they were dead. However, they were full of energy and their cultivation was profound. When they landed, there was no sound, no trace left on the snow, only the sound of clothes fluttering in the wind. Bang, 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 bang. The 10 people were thrown to the ground one after another. The 10 men in black stretched out their palms and slowly pressed down on the 10 people on the ground. Chu Li said in a deep voice, "Do it." The God-fiend guard did not hesitate to charge at the black-robed man. Bang, bang, bang. In an instant they were in a mess. After a moment they were at a disadvantage. The cultivation of these 10 black-clothed men was higher than theirs, causing Sang Qingyun to frown. Chu Li had already arrived at the side of the 10 people on the ground and hit each of them with his palm. The 10 people got up one after another. Sang Qingyun shouted, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and do it." He was relieved that these 10 disciples had narrowly escaped death, but at the same time, he was angry that they had been captured without a sound. It was such a disgrace to the Flying Heaven sect. If the sect leader had not predicted this and set up an ambush in advance, they would have lost their lives. The Flying Heaven sect spent a lot of money to nurture a disciple, and the death of one was a great loss. The 10 Flying Heaven sect disciples gave Chu Li a fist salute, then pounced on the 10 black-clothed men. They divided into 2 groups of 5 and rushed at a black-clothed man. Together with the God-fiend guard, they quickly took down one black-clothed man, then pounced on another black-clothed man, and quickly took down another one. Chu Li nodded in satisfaction. If he were to take action, these 10 black-clothed men would not be able to withstand a single blow. However, as the sect leader, he could not do everything himself. The biggest possibility was to train the sect disciples, especially the God-fiend guards. If he were to let go of this opportunity to train, The God-fiend guards would not be able to take on such a big responsibility with just their cultivation. Sang Qingyun said, "Sect leader, these people are?" He could not tell the martial arts of these black-clothed men. As the hall leader of the sanctuary, he was well versed in the martial arts of various sections. Even if he had not practiced it, he had seen it before. This was the basic requirement for a hall leader of the sanctuary. He could recognize any disciple from any sect after a few moves, but he had never seen the martial arts of these 10 black-clothed men before him, so he could not tell. Chu Li scoffed, "Who cares which sect they are from, just kill them." Sang Qingyun looked at Chu Li strangely. Chu Li said, "It's rare for you to be so muddle-headed." Sang Qingyun's expression turned solemn, and he slowly nodded as if he had understood something. The sect leader's behavior must be because the sect of these black-clothed men was too powerful. It was better to feign ignorance, or else the Flying Heaven sect would have no chance of winning if they fell out. The sect leader's martial arts were rarely matched, and there were only a handful of people who could defeat him. Sang Qingyun had a vague guess. Bang! With a muffled sound, one of the black-clothed men exploded into a black fog. Heavenly demonic disintegration technique. Sang Qingyun grunted. The 2 God-fiend guards quickly retreated, but the 5 ordinary disciples of the Flying Heaven sect could not avoid it. They were enveloped by the black fog and fell to the ground, motionless, dead. "Damn it!" Sang Qingyun snorted angrily, reaching into his pocket to take out a spirit pill. The Flying Heaven sect was also a famous sect with top-notch spirit medicine. If one died immediately, they could be saved with spirit pills, but their cultivation level would have to be recultivated, although their martial arts would not be crippled. Chu Li swept past the 5 disciples like a wisp of smoke. The 5 disciples floated up, then opened their eyes in the air, and slowly landed on the ground. They could already stand up, although they could not fight, they were fine. Sang Qingyun let out a sigh of relief and snorted, "Be careful of the heavenly demonic disintegration technique." The others quickly responded and continued to attack. Bang bang bang! With a series of explosions, the remaining black-clothed men were all dead. They wanted to escape, but they could not shift the void. They wanted to use their light body technique to escape, but they were surrounded and killed. Chu Li frowned and pondered. Sang Qingyun said, "Sect leader." Chu Li said, "The God-fiend guards are still lacking." Sang Qingyun nodded helplessly. Chu Li said, "Let's do it this way, enter the foreign battlefield. Disguise as celestials and fight Asuras?" Sang Qingyun asked. Chu Li nodded. "Asuras are proficient in the art of killing. It's difficult to improve without fighting Asuras, and the God-fiend guards' cultivation level has reached the bottleneck. They need the stimulation of life and death." "Yes," Sang Qingyun said, "after I return, I will send them to the foreign battlefield in batches." Chu Li nodded. "Let's go." He suddenly disappeared. Sang Qingyun glanced at the place where the battle took place, then left with the others. Chapter 24:18. The group returned to the Flying Heaven sect, and appeared outside the sect leader's grand hall. Chu Li waved his hand and gestured for them to leave. Only Hu Tianlai was waiting. Sang Qingyun didn't leave, and the 2 of them followed him into the main hall. Chu Li waved his hand and gestured for them to sit down and talk. He sat in the armchair in the middle of the room and pondered in silence. Hu Tianlai chuckled and said, "The sect master is indeed successful in every endeavor." Chu Li was startled awake. He smiled and shook his head. Sang Qingyun's face was solemn as he said slowly, "Sect master, can you really not tell me which sect it is?" "Great Dream sect," Chu Li replied. "But why can't I recognize their martial arts?" Sang Qingyun shook his head and said, "They are not using the martial arts of the Great Dream sect. Otherwise, they would not have been so easily restrained. The martial arts of the Great Dream Martial School were marvelous. They could predict the opponent's moves, so it was impossible to guard against them. Even though the 10 men in black were highly cultivated and their moves were exquisite, they were still weaker than the Great Dream Master. Chu Li sighed. The Great Dream sect has great foresight. Sang Qingyun was also a smart person and immediately understood. This was a force that the Demeng House had specially prepared for this kind of dirty work. Although it was despicable, it was very effective. If it was not the headmaster, he would not have thought that it was the Demeng House. Since the sect leader had the ability to predict, which was comparable to the Great Dream sect, he was able to see through their disguise. If it were another person, the sect leader of the other sect, it would be difficult for him to see through their disguise. All of them were desperados, and they would use the Sky Demon disintegration technique at the slightest provocation. It would be impossible to ask them about their background, and instead, they would suffer heavy casualties. When he thought of this, he looked at Chu Li with admiration in his eyes. Hu Tianlai hurriedly asked, "Headmaster, was it the Great Dream School that kidnapped our disciples?" Chu Li nodded. Sang Qingyun said coldly, "They want to kill our disciples and frame the heaven-devouring sect, then provoke a war between the two sects. Evil." Hu Tianlai gritted his teeth and said, "What does the Great Dream Martial School want? If the heaven-devouring sect fights with us, both sides will suffer heavy losses. Could it be that the Great Dream sect wants to be the fisherman who benefits from the fight?" "It must be so." Sang Qingyun snorted. Hu Tianlai frowned and said, "Isn't the Great Dream sect on good terms with us?" Smiling on the face and stabbing in the back, "This is very common." Sang Qingyun sneered, "I never thought that sect leader Qing would be such a person." Even though the Great Dream sect had robbed others of their lucky encounters, and even though they were not open and above board, they would not kill the innocent. They had always been kind, and they would not kill for no reason unless there was a conflict of interest. Therefore, they had a good reputation in the heavenly demon realm. Hu Tianlai and Sang Qingyun did not expect Qing Yuan to do such a thing, inciting a war between the two sections. Who knew how many people would die? There must be benefits involved in doing something like this. Hu Tianlai frowned and said, "What exactly is he trying to do? Is he just trying to reap the benefits? Could it be that we have a treasure that even Qing Yuan is interested in?" Chu Li asked, "Have you heard of the Heaven Forbidden sect?" Hu Tianlai frowned and thought for a moment, but Sang Qingyun said, "The ancient Heaven Forbidden sect?" Chu Li nodded. Sang Qingyun said, "Very few people know about the Heaven Forbidden sect. It's a taboo." Hu Tianlai scoffed, "Why is it taboo?" "Because the Heaven Forbidden sect set a bad precedent," Sang Qingyun said. "They once unified the Skyfiend realm." "That's impossible, right?" Hu Tianlai was shocked. He could not imagine how they could unify the Skyfiend realm. It was impossible. Chu Li told them about the news he got from Lu Yurong, and the two's faces darkened as they listened. They laughed coldly. What a great dream sect, so ambitious. No wonder. Hu Tianlai laughed coldly. The Great Dream sect wants to eradicate our two sects, or even three sects. I'm flattered. It seems like they think highly of us. Although the Heaven Flying sect was also a top-notch sect, it was still a level lower than the Divine Sword sect and the Heaven Devouring sect. Qing Yuan's actions clearly showed that he saw the Heaven Flying sect as a major threat and wanted to get rid of them. Sang Qingyun said, "It must be because of the sect leader." He had already experienced Chu Li's methods and power. He was even better than Zhao Lingfeng, especially when it came to the art of divination. He was definitely a thorn in Qing Yuan's side. He hurriedly said, "Sect leader, bring 4 demon god guards as protectors." Although the 4 demon god guards' martial arts were not as good as the sect leaders, they could still do some trivial things. Chu Li waved his hand. "It's better if I do it myself." Sang Qingyun nodded and did not insist. He frowned. "Sect leader, Qing Yuan's plan did not work. I'm afraid that he will use another plan and instigate conflict between us and the Heaven Devouring sect. In the end, we can't escape." Chu Li said, The heaven-devouring sect is not that stupid. When we made our move, they saw it from the side. They were there? Sang Qingyun's expression changed slightly. He did not notice it at all. It was obvious that his cultivation level was far inferior to the other party. Chu Li nodded. It was Ming Yuchuan. He is also a smart man and knows what to do. I'm just afraid that he will push the boat along. Hu Tianlai said. He has been itching to make a move and is eager to have an excuse. Chu Li smiled. Don't worry about that. Just pretend that this never happened. Demon God Guards start training in the foreign battlefield. 1 batch per month. It will be difficult to improve without hard work. Yes, Sang Qingyun said in a low voice. After Chu Li waved his hand and sent the two away, he stood in front of the window with his hands behind his back. This was where Zhao Lingfeng liked to stand. He looked at the mountains in the distance. His heart was as calm as still water. He was not angry about Qing Yuan's methods. If it were him, his methods would be crueler. He would kill the disciples of the two sects and throw them together. The effect would be better. Suddenly, he moved his fingers and activated the flying star technique again. He suddenly disappeared and appeared in a small courtyard. He saw Lu Jianfei pacing back and forth with an anxious expression. Senior Lu. Chu Li fist saluted. Lu Jianfei saw him and let out a sigh of relief. You're finally here. Chu Li asked, where is Senior Yang? He did not see Yang Qingmeng in the small courtyard. The two of them were inseparable. It was unusual that he did not see Yang Qingmeng. Lu Jianfei shook his head and sighed. Qingmeng is missing. I went to the butterfly dance sect to look for her but was told that she did not return. They are also looking for her but have not been able to find her. I can't see anything in the heavenly demonic territory, so I can only ask you for help. Chu Li said, bring me one of Senior Yang's personal belongings. Lu Jianfei quickly went into the house and found a necklace. This is what she carries with her. Chu Li took it and asked, Senior Lu hasn't returned? Lu Jianfei shook his head, feeling slightly embarrassed. He had always been in love with her and wanted to return to Great Sky Peak countless times, yet he was reluctant to do so. In the end, he didn't manage to leave and dragged it on until now. Originally, he planned to bring Yang Qingmeng back with him, but this incident happened. He was anxious and immediately went to the butterfly dance sect. He thought that it was the butterfly dance sect who had summoned Yang Qingmeng back. He did not expect that the butterfly dance sect did not know of Yang Qingmeng's whereabouts but knew that she was still alive through the sect's jade tag. He thought about it and finally thought of Chu Li. At this time, he could not care less about embarrassing himself and immediately asked for help. Chu Li pressed on the necklace and frowned. The necklace was simple and plain. It was just a stone and not a gem. It seemed to be made from a small stone. Chapter 24:19. Yo. Qin Mengyun looked around and heaved a sigh of relief. She was afraid that it was just a dream. A moment later, the void twisted, and 3 graceful women gracefully walked out. Behind them were 4 young men. They looked around with solemn expressions and arrived in front of her. The lady in front was dressed in a snow-white robe. Her body was graceful and her face was cold. She looked like a fairy standing in the clouds. She stood quietly in the void and looked down at the men in gray. Qin Mengyun curtsied. Master. Lu Qingxue nodded. Wasn't it an eye-opener? Qin Mengyun nodded and said in admiration, I didn't expect there to be such a martial art in this world. It's my first time seeing it too. Even I can't compare to him. It's impossible for you to reach this level in a short time. Don't be greedy. She could see through Qin Mengyun's passion and impulsiveness. She wanted to reach this level in one go. However, she knew that this level could only be found by chance. It was not something an ordinary genius could achieve. Although Qin Mengyun was a top-notch genius with a rare aptitude in the world, it was almost impossible for her to cultivate the martial arts of the dancing butterfly sect to this level. Wu Yuanxi had cultivated to this level, and he was very close to ascending. Sect leader, how can he be so strong at such a young age? A graceful lady frowned. Is it because he consumed the divine demon herb? That's part of the reason, Lu Qingxue said. Her skin was like white jade and her face was like a sculpture. She looked at the sky and said calmly, "This is the god's favored one. He can't be judged by common sense." The divine demon herb is so magical, the others sighed. They all felt that it was a pity that the divine demon herb only appeared once in 100 years, but they were not fated to get it. However, they also knew that it was too difficult to get the divine demon herb back then. They had to get past the Great Dream Sect first, and then use their own abilities to snatch the divine demon herb from the Great Dream Sect. The news of Wu Yuanxi snatching the divine demon herb was spread by the Great Dream Sect. No one suspected it. He also obtained the Sky Demon Blade. That's why his martial art is so strong. Lu Qingxue said, without the divine demon herb, he couldn't withstand the Sky Demon Blade's backfire and went berserk. Now, as she spoke, she shook her head. Qin Mengyan hurriedly asked, "Master, is Brother Wu in danger?" The Sky Demon Blade is an ominous blade. It will definitely devour its owner. Lu Qingxue said lightly. He can suppress it for a while, but he can't suppress it forever. Sooner or later, he will be destroyed by the Sky Demon Blade. Then we must quickly remind Brother Wu, Qin Mengyun hurriedly said. Lu Qingxue said, even if he knows the danger, he won't give up. Big Brother Wu has a strong mind. It's not impossible, Qin Mengyun said. Lu Qingxue shook her head lightly. He's the leader of a faction now, so he has no choice. If he really discards the Sky Demon Blade, his strength will be greatly reduced, and the Flying Heaven faction will be in danger. With the Sky Demon Blade in hand, the other factions will be intimidated, and the Flying Heaven faction will be safe for the time being. Sigh. Qin Mengyun sighed faintly and said, "It's been hard on Brother Wu." Lu Qingxue smiled faintly. As the sect master, how can I do as I please? Qin Meng, come here. The void twisted and Yang Qinmeng and Lu Jianfei appeared side by side in front of her. Master. Yang Qinmeng curtsied. Lu Jianfei cupped his fists. He glanced around and revealed a complicated expression. Of course, he knew about Chu Li's background. It was true that after 3 days apart, one would have to look at Chu Li in a different light. Chu Li was so strong that he was far inferior to him. Song Wuji was probably the only opponent in the world. Look, is it them? Lu Qingxue said. Yang Qingmeng nodded lightly. It's them. Standing at the foot of the mountain, one could not see the situation above, but standing at the Dancing Butterfly sect, one could clearly see what was below. Tianfeng's sect. Lu Qingxue frowned slightly and said lightly, "Let's go." Master, should we interrogate them one by one to find out their origins? Qin Mengyun hurriedly asked. Lu Qingxue said, "There's no need to interrogate them. Just kill them and bury them at the foot of the mountain." Kill them all? Qin Mengyun cried out involuntarily. Lu Qingxue glanced at her and said lightly, "They wanted to kill us. Are you going to let them go?" Yes. Qin Mengyun nodded slowly and her expression became firm. If it was not for Big Brother Wu's help, she and her 2 senior sisters would not have survived. Listening to senior sister Yang's words, she knew that they had evil intentions. They wanted to capture all the Dancing Butterfly sect disciples. Most of the Dancing Butterfly sect disciples were beautiful women. If they fell into their hands, the consequences would be unimaginable. Lu Jianfei suddenly said with a smile, "Sect leader, it's better to ask them clearly. What if it's a misunderstanding?" He gritted his teeth in hatred. He did not want to let these people go so easily. It would be too easy for them to die. He had to find out who the mastermind was before he could truly take revenge. He could not let Qin Meng's disaster go to waste. He must take revenge. He must find the mastermind and completely eradicate them. Otherwise, he would not be able to rest easy. There's no point in interrogating them. They won't talk, Lu Qingxue said lightly. Lu Jianfei smiled. I have some tricks that can make them speak honestly. Even if they're death warriors, they can talk. All right, let's see your tricks then. Lu Qingxue stared at him for a while and slowly nodded. Thank you, sect leader. Lu Jianfei gave a fist salute. He floated to the front of a middle-aged man in gray and sat down with his legs crossed. Then, he formed a seal with both hands and mumbled to himself. It seemed like he was making a sound, but there was no sound. He could only feel that there was something strange in the void. After a while, his hand slowly tapped on the forehead of the middle-aged man in gray. Bang! A dull sound like a stone falling from the sky was heard. The surroundings seemed to shake. Lu Qingxue squinted her eyes and looked carefully. This should be the secret skill of Taihao Peak. As the number 1 sect in the Grandmaster of the Grandmaster, Taihao Peak naturally had many secret skills. As the top disciple, Lu Jianfei must know many secret skills. He was like a treasure. The middle-aged man in gray sat up straight. Other than sitting up, he did not move at all. He opened his eyes in confusion. Lu Jianfei asked gently, Which sect are you from? The Tianfeng sect, the middle-aged man in gray answered dully. His eyes were still confused and unfocused. Lu Jianfei said, Why did the disciples of the Tianfeng sect suddenly become so powerful? Because of the opening of the arcane realm, the middle-aged man in gray answered dully. Lu Jianfei frowned and looked at Lu Qingxue. He continued to ask, When did the arcane realm open? 10 days ago. Other than you, who else is stronger in the sect? The elders are stronger, the middle-aged man in gray answered dully. And the Grand Masters in the arcane realm. How many Grand Masters? Lu Jianfei asked gently. 12. The middle-aged man in gray's confused eyes flashed with excitement, reverence, and worship. Once the Grand Masters appear, they are invincible. Lu Jianfei suddenly pointed a finger at the center of the middle-aged man's eyebrows. He fell down stiffly once again and fell unconscious. Lu Qingxue was stunned. Lu Jianfei said, It's not appropriate for him to ask any more questions. Let's ask the next one. Lu Qingxue nodded slowly. Yang Qingming whispered, Brother Lu, don't force yourself. She saw that Lu Jianfei was struggling with sweat on his forehead. Her heart ached and she wanted to pull him away. Chapter 24:20. Yo. Let's take a break. Lu Qingxue said. Seeing that Lu Jianfei was sweating, it was obvious that the secret skill was very taxing on his mind. She knew that it must be very taxing on him. Qin Mengyun quickly nodded. Yang Qingming stared at him with a pleading look. Lu Jianfei smiled. Time is of the essence. If the 12 elders really show up, it'll be bad. Also, do you know what the arcane realm is? Arcane realm. Lu Qingxue sighed and looked into the distance. It's already a legend. I didn't expect it to appear again. I'm afraid the world won't be peaceful anymore. Leader. Lu Jianfei asked curiously, There's only arcane realm here, what about the beyond sky realm? There shouldn't be one in the beyond sky realm. Lu Qingxue shook her head. Arcane realms are formed by gods and demons. Lu Jianfei secretly sighed in relief. To be able to push them to this level in just 10 days, Qin Mengyun said softly, Master, this arcane realm is very powerful. Yes, Lu Qingxue said, what's more terrifying are the elders in the arcane realm. They're all immortal old monsters, we don't know what realm they're at, she frowned and shook her head, looking serious. Lu Jianfei said, I'll continue asking. As he finished, he sat in front of another middle-aged man in gray, formed a seal with both hands, and chanted in a low voice. The void twisted, and his hands gently tapped on the forehead of the middle-aged man in gray. Suddenly, a dull thud was heard, and the surroundings shook as if the earth had trembled. The middle-aged man in gray suddenly sat up straight, his eyes staring into the distance, looking lost. Lu Jianfei said, "Why are you here under orders?" "To conquer the dancing butterfly sect." The middle-aged man in gray revealed a hint of fanaticism. Lu Jianfei's expression changed slightly. He was not shocked by the news, but disturbed by the fanaticism. Once that happened, it would be difficult for him to continue asking, so he quickly shouted, "How do we conquer?" "Capture all the disciples of the dancing butterfly sect and force the leader to bow down. If she doesn't yield, kill 10 disciples, kill until she yields." The middle-aged man in gray's dull voice revealed a hint of fanaticism. Lu Jianfei shouted, "Only you guys are here, what about the 12 elders? The old ancestor is in seclusion. He'll be here soon." The gray-robed middle-aged man became even more fervent. His eyes suddenly widened as the confusion in his eyes was replaced by fanaticism. Then, he came to his senses and slapped Lu Jianfei fiercely. Lu Jianfei's countenance was pale like paper and extremely unsightly. He disregarded this palm strike and didn't dodge, and he just watched helplessly as he was about to suffer this palm strike. Bang! Yang Qingming sent the middle-aged man flying with a palm strike. She hurriedly looked at Lu Jianfei. "Big brother Lu." Lu Jianfei waved his hand, closed his eyes, and started to meditate without moving. "This is a backlash." Lu Qingxue shook her head. "Don't disturb him." "Master, is he all right?" Yang Qingming asked worriedly. Lu Qingxue said, "This kind of backlash must be very uncomfortable, but it won't be fatal. I'll be fine after a while." She looked at the motionless middle-aged man in gray and shook her head. "You killed him with this palm." Yang Qingming said embarrassedly, "Sect Master, I was anxious. Should I save him?" "Forget it. It's fine if you kill him. I'm just afraid that it will directly trigger." As soon as she finished speaking, a sneer suddenly sounded. The void distorted, and a gray-robed elder was already standing in front of them. The gray-robed elder was tall and slender. The loose gray robe covered his body like a bamboo pole carrying a long robe. It looked empty. The muscles on the elder's face had almost disappeared, leaving only his bones. It was the same for his neck. A layer of skin was stuck on top of his skull. It looked quite terrifying. He crossed his arms and stood in the void, looking down at Lu Qingxue and the others. His deep eye sockets were like 2 balls of ghostly fire, glowing with a faint blue light. Lu Qingxue and the others felt goosebumps all over their bodies when he glanced at them. It was extremely uncomfortable. Their bodies involuntarily tensed up, as if they had met their natural enemy and sensed danger. Qin Mengyan shouted, "Who are you?" "A disciple of the Heavenly Wind sect." The skeleton-like gray-robed elder laughed hoarsely. His voice sounded as if sand was rubbing against his throat. It was so uncomfortable that they wanted to cover his mouth or ears. "An ancestor from the arcane realm?" Lu Qingxue said lightly. The gray-robed elder chuckled. "Little girl, you're quite knowledgeable." Lu Qingxue said, "Do you think the Dancing Butterfly sect is a pushover?" "That's it. The Dancing Butterfly sect's martial arts aren't strong, but they are well-informed and all of them are beautiful. It's the best way to win over the disciples of other sections." The gray-robed elder chuckled. "If we don't start with you, who should we start with?" "Very well," Lu Qingxue said lightly. "Once the arcane realm appears, the Tianfeng sect will dominate the heavenly demon realm. It's good that you know." The gray-robed elder chuckled. "If you know what's good for you, surrender and let us order you around. In the future, when we unify the heavenly demon realm, the Dancing Butterfly sect will benefit greatly. If you don't surrender, don't blame me for destroying you. You want to slaughter the Dancing Butterfly sect," Lu Qingxue said lightly. The gray-robed elder said, "Since you know about the arcane realm, you can only die." Qin Mengyan scoffed. "Unify the heavenly demon realm? Dream on. Let's ask the Great Dream sect first. The Great Dream sect is nothing to worry about." The gray-robed elder chuckled. They're just a bunch of people who think they're smart. What's there to be afraid of? We're nothing to be afraid of? A leisurely voice was heard. It was Qing Yuan who slowly walked out of the void and stood opposite the gray-robed elder. Behind him were two yellow-robed elders, all of them looking serious. Qing Yuan chuckled. Old monster from the arcane realm, you sure talk big. You're looking down on the Great Dream Sect. The gray-robed elder's will-o'-the-wisp eyes flickered with flames. He squinted and chuckled. You're quite capable. Looks like you've predicted my appearance. How can you hide from us if you're from the arcane realm? Qing Yuan said lightly. The Tianfeng sect is lucky, but it ends here. So what if it's the arcane realm? You've been hiding in the arcane realm for 10,000 years. Your cultivation isn't that strong. Ha ha! The gray-robed elder laughed heartily and shook his head. You're really frogs at the bottom of a well. Taking care of you is as easy as flipping my palm. As soon as he finished speaking, he lightly patted. Suddenly, the wind howled and the clouds surged. The people around could not open their eyes. They only felt that they were swaying in the wind and could not exert any strength. They desperately tried to stabilize their bodies but failed. Then, they were hit in the chest. Bang, 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 bang. Among the muffled sounds, figures flew out one after another. The wind stopped. Other than Qing Yuan and Lu Qingxue, everyone was lying on the ground, seriously injured. Hee. The gray-robed elder stood steadily in the void and looked down at them with a strange laugh. He shook his head and said, That's all. You brats haven't improved in 10,000 years. You're all so weak. Lu Qingxue's white robe fluttered, her body emitting a hazy white light. Qing Yuan's face was gloomy and serious. He stared at the gray-robed elder. What a great heavenly wind palm! Chapter 24-21. He struck out with his palm, and the wind and clouds surged again. Two streams of light descended. Qing Yuan and Lu Qingxue had both used the enlightened god's descent. Bang bang! With two muffled sounds, the gale dissipated. Qing Yuan and Lu Qingxue's figures appeared, staring coldly at the gray-robed elder. The gray-robed elder standing in the void narrowed his eyes slightly and nodded slowly. It really is the enlightened god's descent. You guys only have this much potential. You need to borrow external forces. You too. Qing Yuan said slowly. You really are an old monster after forcing us to this step. Today you will die here. He disappeared in a flash and appeared behind the gray-robed elder in the next moment. Lu Qingxue appeared in front of the gray-robed elder in the next moment, and the two of them attacked from the front and back. The two of them had a tacit understanding, but the gray-robed elder easily turned sideways and caught their palms. Bang! The explosion was like thunder, and all three of them flew backward. The gray-robed elder flew sideways and waved his palm in the air. Qing Yuan and Lu Qingxue flew backward, facing the silent palm force in the air. The heavenly wind was invisible or visible, but the gray-robed elder's two palms were invisible and silent, completely different from the previous howling wind. Bang! Bang! The two of them flew backward again. Even after using the enlightened god's descent, they still couldn't suppress this old monster. The two of them were shocked, but they were abnormally calm. After using the enlightened god's descent, there would be no retreat or fear, only calmness and calculation. Chi. Qing Yuan pointed out with a finger and broke the palm force. Lu Qingxue slashed lightly, and the palm blade silently split the heavenly wind palm. Bang! Bang! Chi. The three of them fought together. Their figures flickered, appearing and disappearing as if they were illusions. The people who fell to the ground widened their eyes, focusing on this side while healing their injuries. Qin Mingyun's heart sank. The two sect masters couldn't suppress an old monster, and there were 12 such old monsters in the Heavenly Wind sect. If they attacked at the same time, could the sect stop them? She felt a chill at the thought. Qingxue, it's time to fight. Qing Yuan said in a deep voice. Lu Qingxue said, "Okay." Brilliant rays of light burst forth from the two of them like two suns descending. In the next moment, they appeared in front of the gray-robed old man. The gray-robed elder snorted, "Wind, come!" A soundless wind appeared around him, and the two's lights were actually unable to approach him. The gray-robed elder snorted and said, "Don't think that you're invincible just because you have the deity descent technique. If this old man couldn't find a way to restrain you, would I have come here to throw my life away? What wind is this?" Qing Yuan asked in a deep voice. 9 serenities, wind. The gray-robed old man said proudly, "This old man spent thousands of years to subdue the 9 nether wind. It corrodes the soul and corrodes the bones. Have you tasted it?" He knew the weakness of the deity descent technique, and that was that it was most likely a treasure that injured the soul. Once the soul was injured, the deity would be injured, and the user would need to spend their lifespan to repair it. As long as the injury was severe enough, the lifespan wouldn't be enough. Although there were very few treasures in the world that could injure the deity's soul, it wasn't that they didn't exist. The 9 serenities wind was one of them. It was the coldest and most wind in the world, and it was incomparably strange. If he hadn't had a fortuitous encounter in the secret realm, obtaining a treasure and complementing it with a secret technique, it would definitely have been difficult for him to succeed. With this 9 serenities wind, he was the nemesis of the deities, and the various sect masters had nothing to fear. Of course, the 9 serenities wind also needed to be used carefully, because it looked strong but also fragile, and the number of times it could be used was limited. But with this, it was enough to form a deterrent. Later on, the various sect masters didn't dare to use the deity descent technique in front of him. Qing Yuan sneered and took out a scarlet bead from his bosom. Brilliant light shone on the bead, and it was as red as blood. The gray-robed elder cried out involuntarily, "Scarlet blood bead!" "Ha ha!" Qing Yuan laughed and waved the red bead. "If you don't keep the 9 serenities wind, I'll use this scarlet blood bead." His divination skills were extremely high, and he deduced what treasure he needed and brought it in advance. The gray-robed elder's face darkened, and he said coldly, "Then use the scarlet blood bead to see." Qing Yuan sneered and directly crushed the scarlet blood bead. The scarlet blood bead shattered, and a red light shot toward the gray-robed elder. Like the gurgling sound of boiling water, the red light lingered around the gray-robed elder, becoming stronger and stronger. No matter how he waved his palm, he couldn't get rid of it. The red light was like a flame that fell on oil, becoming stronger and stronger. Amidst the gurgling sound, the 9 serenities wind around the gray-robed elder quickly dissipated. His skull-like face was twisted and hideous, and his remaining muscles changed drastically. His eyes glared at Qing Yuan like a ghostly fire. Qing Yuan sneered and said, "Old man, you asked for it. Then this old man will show you a little something too." As the gray-robed elder sneered, he pushed his hands toward the sky, and suddenly, a bolt of lightning fell. Like a ghost, he instantly appeared in front of Qing Yuan and slapped down with his palm. Bang! Qing Yuan was sent flying. "Ah!" He let out a shrill scream in the air. This scream was painful to the bone, as if it hurt the soul. Although the scarlet blood bead burned the 9 serenities wind, it couldn't burn it all in a short while. This short while was enough for him to severely injure the 2 enlightened masters. Seeing this, Lu Qingxue wanted to dodge, but the gray-robed elder sneered and pounced toward Qin Mengyun. Lu Qingxue could only block in front of Qin Mengyun and receive his palm. "Ah!" Lu Qingxue also let out a shrill scream. Qin Mengyun pounced toward the gray-robed elder. Bang! She was directly sent flying, spitting out pieces of flesh in the air. "Mengyun!" Lu Qingxue screamed. She appeared beside Qin Mengyun in a flash, took out a spirit medicine from her bosom, and stuffed it into her mouth. However, Qin Mengyun already had no strength to swallow, and she was already dead. She could only transfer her inner energy to push her blood circulation, and transfer her life essence and true lifespan. This was a secret technique unique to the dancing butterfly sect. 10 years of lifespan could keep Qin Mengyun alive, allowing her to swallow the spirit medicine. When the spirit medicine took effect, she could use the secret technique to save her life. Qing Yuan couldn't care less about his own injuries. He turned in the air and pounced toward the gray-robed elder again, stopping him from attacking Lu Qingxue. The gray-robed elder sneered. This heavenly wind palm directly destroyed her soul, and it can't save her. Don't waste your effort. He then glanced at the others and sneered. There are many people from the dancing butterfly sect. I'll kill them one by one slowly, and we'll see if you'll yield. You deserve to die. Lu Qingxue roared in anger. She was no longer as cold and otherworldly as before. Her eyes were burning with anger, and she pushed Qin Mengyun. She thought highly of Qin Mengyun as the next sect leader, and she had great talent. She was the future hope of the dancing butterfly sect. But now she was silent and cold. Even her secret technique couldn't save her. Her body quickly stiffened as if she had been dead for a day, and she had lost the opportunity to save her. The gray-robed elder laughed loudly. I deserve to die, but I can't. It's been 10,000 years, and there's no meaning in living anymore. As long as I fulfill this wish, I can ascend, ha ha. He laughed proudly, and he didn't even look at the cold Qin Mengyun. Instead, his gaze fell on Yang Qingmeng and the two graceful women. Qing Yuan was sent flying again, and he screamed in pain. The bystanders trembled when they heard him. However, Qing Yuan charged forward again and again, unafraid of death. Chapter 24-22. Lu Jianfei suddenly opened his eyes and stepped in front of Yang Qingmeng to block her. He stared coldly at the gray-robed elder and said, "Ascension after unifying the heavenly demon realm? What a joke!" His words were aimed at the elder's heart, trying to slow him down. At the same time, he secretly crushed the jade talisman hidden in his sleeve, hoping that Chu Li would arrive in time. The gray-robed elder chuckled. Young man, you're still too young to use a delaying tactic. However, I'd like to see who else dares to come and die. Ascension after unifying the heavenly demon realm is certain, but you're just ignorant. You're not from the heavenly demon realm. Lu Jianfei scoffed. That's right, I'm from the Grandmaster's realm. Good. Good. The gray-robed elder looked at him from head to toe. His fiery eyes seemed to be able to see through Yi Chen. He kept nodding his head. You are indeed a good talent, a rare talent. Then cultivate the martial arts of our heavenly wind sect. Lu Jianfei sneered. What's the Tianfeng sect? The Tianfeng sect was unfilial before, it's all their disciples' fault. The gray-robed elder was not angry, he chuckled. But now, with the arcane realm, they're the world's #1 sect. Sooner or later, they'll unify the heavenly demon realm. You're lucky to become a disciple of the Tianfeng sect. It's also because I'm kind, I'll let this young lady go. He pointed at Yang Qingmeng. Yang Qingmeng's delicate lips were stained with blood, like a piece of white jade with a little cinnabar. Her bright eyes were cold as she calmly looked at the gray-robed elder. She said, "It's not like before, there's no more sect that can unify the world. That's because the arcane realm is not coming out." The gray-robed elder laughed. So, does this young man want to join the Tianfeng sect? He suddenly struck with his palm. Qing Yuan screamed and flew out. The red flame kept burning beside the gray-robed elder, but it did not extinguish. He did not seem to care as he calmly talked to Lu Jianfei and walked towards Yang Qingmeng. When they were 3 meters away, Lu Jianfei said, "Forget it, stop." Agreed? The gray-robed old man chuckled and said, "A wise man submits to circumstances. Once I'm done with these guys, follow me back to the sect." Bam! He once again sent Qing Yuan flying with a palm strike. At the same time, He looked at Lu Jianfei with a faint gaze. Lu Jianfei hugged Yang Qingming and smiled bitterly. He wanted to escape but realized that the void was locked and he could not use the void diversion technique. He understood why Chu Li did not appear. It must be because the void was locked and he could not find him. After giving up, he suddenly calmed down. They could not be born on the same day, month, and year, but they could die on the same day, month, and year. This was not necessarily a form of guarding each other. For the two of them to die together was a stroke of luck. He lowered his head and smiled at Yang Qingming. Yang Qingming understood his intentions and smiled back. She was beautiful and alluring as she snuggled into his embrace. She no longer cared about the wind and rain outside or her own life and death. You two have a good relationship, but I've never liked to help others achieve their goals. The gray-robed old man chuckled. Don't even think about dying together. Kill the little girl first. As soon as he finished speaking, he struck out with his palm soundlessly. Don't you dare! Lu Jianfei roared and his sword shone brightly. The tip of the sword instantly pierced the gray-robed old man's chest. Ding! The tip of the sword bounced off and sparks flew. The gray-robed old man's palm energy hit Yang Qingming squarely. Bam! A muffled sound was heard. Suddenly, a palm appeared in front of Yang Qingming and blocked the heaven gale palm. The gray-robed old man took a step back and his expression changed. His skull-like face had limited muscles and was almost expressionless. Whenever there was an expression, it could only be seen because of the drastic changes in his muscles. He widened his eyes in disbelief and stared at Chu Li, who appeared from the void. He stood in the void as if he was standing on the ground. He stood with his hands behind his back and his white robe fluttered as he looked at him calmly. Who are you? The gray-robed old man cried out. Qing Yuan's bloodshot eyes widened and revealed joy. He shouted, Yuan Si. His voice was hoarse and unpleasant to hear. Chu Li smiled and nodded, sect leader Qing. He then nodded at Lu Qingxue. Senior Lu, I'm late. You're really late. Lu Qingxue gently let go and looked at Qin Mengyun, who was below her. She sighed softly. You won't be able to see Mengyun anymore. Chu Li took a step to Qin Mengyun's side and glanced at the gray-robed old man with a frown. The gray-robed old man could not help but tremble. His expression became even more unpleasant, but he did not act rashly. Lu Jianfei let out a long sigh of relief. He pulled Yang Qingming into his arms and hugged her tightly. Mengyun has passed away, Lu Qingxue said faintly. She looked at the gray-robed old man coldly, her eyes sparkling like a clear lake. Chu Li shook his head. There's still a glimmer of hope. He raised his hands as if he was bowing to the sky. Then, a starlight flashed across the clear blue sky. The starlight fell like a white line and landed between Chu Li's hands, forming a white glow. The white glow that was the size of an apple seemed to be bouncing. Then, Chu Li held it and sent it into Qin Mengyun's forehead. Her forehead was illuminated by the white glow and a small palace appeared faintly. Then, the white glow went into the palace. The white glow quickly shrunk. After it went into the palace seemed to become more real. Then, it disappeared again and the white glow disappeared too. Qin Mengyun trembled slightly and slowly opened her eyes. Mengyun! Lu Qingxue cried out involuntarily. She looked at Chu Li in shock and lowered her head to look at Qin Mengyun. She reached out and grabbed Qin Mengyun's hand, afraid that it was just an illusion. Qin Mengyun's hand was cold and soft. It was no different from her usual self. Chu Li smiled and said, Thank goodness. Qin Mengyun was puzzled and her eyes were dazed. Chu Li looked at the gray-robed old man and said calmly, May I know who you are? Lu Qingxue said faintly, The Tianfeng sect's arcane realm has opened again. He's from the arcane realm and has lived for more than 10,000 years. His cultivation level is extremely high. Even our enlightened god's descent technique can't compare. You should be careful. She had already stopped using the Enlightened God's descent technique. Qing Yuan had also stopped using the Enlightened God's descent technique to avoid being hurt by the Netherworld's wind. Although the crimson blood orb could damage the Netherworld's wind, looking at the situation, it could not be destroyed in a short period of time. It could only waste time. Unfortunately, it could not be done at all. The gray-robed old man's cultivation level was too strong. He was already in despair and thought that he would not be able to survive today's calamity. He did not expect Chu Li to break through the void and finally arrive. They were saved. Chu Li knew about the legend of the arcane realm. He frowned and looked at the gray-robed old man. Someone from the arcane realm? Young man, who are you? The gray-robed old man said coldly. The red flames around him burned brighter. Chu Li said, Sect leader of the Flying Heavens sect, Wu Yuanci. You're the new sect leader of the Flying Heavens sect? The gray-robed old man said coldly, You do have some skills. No wonder they're afraid. That's good. I'll take care of them today. The next step is to destroy the Flying Heavens sect. Chu Li chuckled. How arrogant. Then let's wait and see. The gray-robed old man scoffed and struck out his palm silently. Chu Li squinted his eyes and a blue light flashed. Chapter 24-23. This was not the manifestation of the God-punishing thunder sword, but the merciless sword. Bang! The sound of an explosion made everyone's heart skip a beat. It was as if their hearts had stopped beating. Chu Li stood still with his hands behind his back. The gray-robed elder's feet slid on the ground and he retreated 10 feet away. Nice move. The gray-robed elder laughed in anger, feeling that he had been tricked by Chu Li. His greatest strength was his spiritual force. For the past 10,000 years, he had cultivated hard in the arcane realm. Thanks to the power of the arcane realm, his spiritual force was 100 times stronger than ordinary people. He had always used his spiritual force to control others. He did not even need to use the occult spirit skill to deal with Qing Yuan and Lu Qingshu. He did not expect Wu Yuanci to give him such a hard time. He was ambushed by the occult spirit skill and was slightly injured. If he used the occult spirit skill again, its power would be greatly reduced. Chu Li shook his head. What's the use of having only a body of power? Damn you, eat my heaven gale palm. He roared and lightly struck with his palm. This palm looked no different from the previous one, but combined with his spiritual force, its power was earth-shattering. Chu Li unsheathed his blade and lightly slashed. Everyone's vision darkened. The heavenly demonic blade had already cut the gray-robed elder's arm. Ding! A clear sound like the collision of gold and iron. The gray-robed elder's arm was like iron. His muscles were knotted and shone with a black luster. It was a body-tempering secret skill. It was invulnerable and could even block the heavenly demonic blade's blade. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. The heavenly demonic blade flashed slightly like a stream of light. The gray-robed elder's right arm was cut in half from the elbow. There was no blood. Heavenly demonic blade. The gray-robed elder screamed. He picked up the severed arm and disappeared in a flash. Chu Li sheathed his blade and shook his head. He looked in the direction where the elder disappeared. What a heavenly demonic blade! Qing Yuan shouted. His face was as pale as paper. The corner of his mouth was already stained with blood. His chest was also stained with blood. Chu Li shook his head. I couldn't kill him. What a pity! These old fellows were all scourges. If one of them was left alive, they might kill hundreds or even thousands of Flying Heaven sect's disciples. Fortunately, he had been struck by the sky demon saber, so it would be up to him if he wanted to survive. Being able to heavily injure him is already commendable. Qing Yuan shook his head, cupped his fists, and sighed. I really can't help but be convinced. Yuanci, your current cultivation is so high that you're almost invincible. Chu Li could not help but laugh. Sect leader Qing, don't flatter me. I'm still far from being invincible. It's hard to find an opponent in this world. Qing Yuan sighed. I never expected you to have such a fortuitous encounter and improve so quickly. He was indeed full of emotions. He had never expected that he would need Wu Yuanxi to save his life. Without Wu Yuanxi, his life would be in danger, and Qing Shui's life would also be in danger. It was truly a disaster. He had spent a great deal of effort to deduce this, but both Lu Qingxue and he had encountered misfortune, so he had not been able to deduce who his benefactor was. He had never expected that it would be Chuli. How ironic! Qin Mengyun smiled. Sect leader Qing, is Big Brother Wu really invincible? Qing Yuan sighed. Even if he's not invincible, the number of opponents can be counted on one hand. Song Wuji from the Grandmaster realm, the Azura deity king and the goddess, or the hidden old demons from the heavenly demonic realm are extremely rare. Qin Mengyun beamed. She was happier than if she was invincible as she looked at Chu Li proudly. Chu Li smiled. Sect leader Qing, Senior Lu, what's going on with the Tianfeng sect's arcane realm? Let's talk inside, Lu Qingxue said. Yes, let's go in and have a seat, Qing Yuan hurriedly said. Lu Qingxue gave him a sidelong glance, and Qing Yuan hurriedly smiled. Chu Li was baffled. It seemed like there was something going on between the two. Could they be lovers? The group entered the butterfly dance sect, and immediately, a group of men and women came to welcome them. They looked at Qin Mengyun with lingering fear. They had clearly seen Qin Mengyun die a violent death on the mountain. Their hearts ached, but they did not expect her to be saved so suddenly. She was actually able to survive under such circumstances. She was really lucky. Being lucky was the most powerful quality of a person in the martial arts world. Without enough luck, it was useless no matter how strong one's martial arts was. Lu Qingxue waved her hand and the crowd dispersed. Chu Li, Lu Qingxue, and Qing Yuan entered the sect leader's basilica. Lu Jianfei followed Yang Qingmeng to treat her injuries. Chu Li said, Senior Lu, you should order the disciples to go into hiding. We can't stay here any longer. Qing Yuan hurriedly said, what Yuan Si said makes sense. This old demon will definitely not be willing to suffer a loss. She'll definitely ask someone to come back for revenge. The disciples will only die in vain if they stay here. Lu Qingxue slowly nodded. Yes, I'll be back soon. Her graceful figure disappeared in a flash. Chu Li saw that Qing Yuan was staring in the direction where she disappeared, seemingly lost in thought. Chu Li could not help but chuckle. Why did sect leader Qing suddenly rush over? I deduced that there will be a disaster here. Qing Yuan retracted his gaze and touched his chin as if nothing had happened. Something big has happened. I didn't expect it to be something big. The old demon of the Tianfeng sect has appeared, and the world will not be at peace. Chu Li was more and more certain that Qing Yuan liked Lu Qingxue. It was no wonder. Lu Qingxue was similar to Shao Qi. Not only was she unparalleled in beauty, but her temperament was also as pure as ice and as clean as jade. Men could not resist her. No matter how powerful Qing Yuan was, he was still a man. It was not surprising that he liked her. Chu Li asked, how many arcane realms are there in the world? He knew about the legends of arcane realms in the books in the Sutra library. However, most of them were vague and only recorded a legend. Arcane realms were special areas located between this world and the upper world. Not only would one's martial arts improve rapidly by cultivating there, but there were also countless exotic flowers and herbs that could help improve one's skills and cultivation. Therefore, if one was lucky enough to enter the arcane realm, it must be an extraordinary encounter. After coming out, even if one was not invincible, one would be a rare master in the world. However, the appearance of arcane realms was unpredictable, even more unpredictable than divine herbs. He was not too sure about the rest, but Qing Yuan must know more. Qing Yuan shook his head. Logically speaking, every ancient sect has an arcane realm. Chu Li frowned. The Tianfeng sect is an ancient sect? Indeed. Qing Yuan slowly nodded. Unfortunately, the disciples are unworthy. They were not able to display their potential and continued to decline. Chu Li's frown deepened. As far as he knew, the Flying Heaven sect was also an ancient sect, but they never had the existence of arcane realms. Otherwise, as the sect leader, he would have known. Qing Yuan said, but then the arcane realms disappeared one by one, leaving only 6 arcane realms. Chu Li sighed. Why did the arcane realms disappear? It may have something to do with the upper heaven. Qing Yuan said, these 6 arcane realms were closed 10,000 years ago and disappeared without a trace. I didn't expect the Tianfeng sect's arcane realm to suddenly open. Chu Li asked, when the arcane realm opens, can outsiders enter? They can't. Qing Yuan shook his head. The opening of the Tianfeng sect's arcane realm means that their strength has skyrocketed. Not to mention the strength of the disciples after entering the arcane realm, even the old demons in the arcane realm are enough to sweep the world and render all heroes helpless. Chu Li smiled. My sect no longer has the arcane realm, but the Great Dream sect still has it? There is, but unfortunately, it hasn't been opened yet. Qing Yuan sighed. It can only be found by chance, and no one knows where the arcane realm is. Chapter 24-24. Chu Li pondered. Usually, when one arcane realm opens, the other arcane realms open too, right? When one arcane realm opens, the other arcane realms will follow suit. Qing Yuan nodded slowly and said, however, they won't open at the same time. There's a sequence. However, the difference between the two is usually more than a decade or even decades. That's a world of difference. Chu Li smiled. Back then, the Forbidden Heaven sect unified the heavenly demonic realm because they were the first to open the arcane realm? Qing Yuan squinted his bloodshot eyes. A glint flashed across his eyes before he smiled and shook his head. I didn't expect you to know about this too. Very few people know about the Forbidden Heaven sect. Chu Li said, I also know that sect leader Qing is ambitious and wants to unify the world. He instigated our relationship with the heaven-devouring sect and Izumo sect and wanted to kill our disciples to frame the heaven-devouring sect. Sigh. Qing Yuan shook his head. My subordinates acted on their own and have been punished by me. Chu Li smiled faintly. If I didn't point it out, sect leader Qing wouldn't have mentioned it, right? It's rare to be muddle-headed. Qing Yuan smiled. But I'll compensate the Flying Heaven sect. It's best to keep it a secret. Chu Li shook his head. Looks like the Sky Wind sect is going to become another Forbidden Heaven sect. Sect leader Qing's dream of unifying the world is over, right? Yes. Qing Yuan sighed and shook his head helplessly. Man proposes but God disposes. There's nothing I can do. He had painstakingly worked hard for so many years, but it was suddenly broken by the Sky Wind sect's arcane realm. The Great Dream sect could not even withstand a single blow from these old demons. Thinking about this, he sighed to himself and was filled with despair. However, in front of Lu Qingxue, he did not want to sigh. He had to remain firm. Chu Li said, Is there no way to stop the Sky Wind sect? The Sky Wind sect was powerful, and the first to be destroyed was the Flying Heaven sect. He could stop them, but the disciples could not. As the sect leader, he was responsible and could only fight the Sky Wind sect head-on. I'm at my wit's end. Qing Yuan frowned. These old demons are very stubborn. Once they've identified their target, it's useless to interfere. The first target is the Dancing Butterfly sect, the second is the Flying Heaven sect, and the next target is the Great Dream sect. Chu Li stood up and paced with his hands behind his back. Lu Qingxue lightly floated into the hall and sighed. The disciples can only move, I will stay here. Why throw away your life? Qing Yuan frowned and said with dissatisfaction, Fighting them head-on is courting death. If we can avoid them, we should avoid them. Who knows, the Dancing Butterfly sect might be able to open the mystic realm in the future. Lu Qingxue gently shook her head. Qing Yuan said anxiously, "Do you like to die that much? Life or death is none of your business." Lu Qingxue glanced at him coldly. "You?" Qing Yuan glared at her. Chu Li coughed softly and said, "Senior Lu, faction leader Cheng's words make sense. We can't defend this place. If Senior Lu doesn't have to worry, let me guard this place. I want to meet the old demons of the Sky Wind sect." "You can't use your Tianma blade lightly," Lu Qingxue said. "It will cause a backlash, and even gods and demons won't be able to save you." Chu Li replied, "I know." Lu Qingxue said no more. As the leader of a sect, Wu Yuanxi had a firm mind. He already knew about the backlash, so there was no need for her to say anything more. He he! Cold laughter suddenly rang out, coming from all directions, coming from everywhere. Chu Li raised his voice and shouted, "I'm Wu Yuanxi from the Flying Heaven sect. If you want to die, come here." He appeared above the basilica in a flash and stood on the dragon's spine of the basilica. His white robe fluttered in the wind. At this time, the setting sun dyed his white robe red, turning it into the color of blood. Chu Li stood with his hands behind his back and glanced at the 8 gray-robed elders standing in the void. He said calmly, "You want to unify the heavenly demonic realm? You're Wu Yuanxi, the one who injured Lil 8? A tall and burly elder with a body like an iron tower shouted. His snow-white hair seemed to be condensed from silver as it shone with silver light. His face was rosy without a single wrinkle. His rosy cheeks were as white as a baby's, and his eyes were as deep and clear as gemstones as he calmly looked at Chu Li. He had a dignified appearance and a righteous expression. Chu Li smiled. "I haven't asked for your names yet. It's been so long that I've forgotten my own name." The tall elder shook his head and sighed. "Let's call you Jingde, Jingde." Chu Li shook his head. "Can't be Jingde, Jing'er, all the way to Jingba, right?" "That's right." Jingde nodded. "Remember our names. When we report our names in the netherworld manner, we'll be ghosts with a clear conscience. Then, let's make our move." As soon as he finished speaking, the other 7 people flashed and rushed toward Chu Li, instantly surrounding him. Chu Li landed on the ground. Jingde and the others followed suit and immediately felt their bodies become sluggish. Boundless power surged from the soles of their feet, distorting the void and combining the top and bottom. Their bodies could not move and their spiritual energy was gone. It was difficult to breathe. It was like a fish being scooped out of the water and placed in a box. They did not take it to heart. No matter how strong Chu Li was, he could not be stronger than them. The restraint was just a joke, and he could easily break it. Moreover, they had already set up a formation, but it was a formation that attacked one's mind. There was no way to avoid it, and Wu Yuanxi would definitely faint. Chu Li slowly pulled out his blade. "Be careful of the Sky Demon Blade," Jingba hissed. He had personally experienced the power of this blade. It was traceless, and their secret skill could not feel it. By the time they saw the blade, it had already hit them. It was truly unpredictable. The only way to restrain the Sky Demon Blade was to restrain him in advance so that he could not use the Sky Demon Blade. Unfortunately, their powerful formation was restrained by him, and they could not restrain him in advance. They could only watch helplessly as he used the Sky Demon Blade. Bang! With a muffled sound, the Sky Demon Blade slashed at Jingde. An invisible force blocked in front of the blade, blocking the force of the blade. Chu Li whistled softly. The blade suddenly lit up, and then it slashed down without any hindrance. Jingde wanted to avoid it, but he found that the restraint on his body could not be resisted. He actually could not break free, and his eyes widened as he watched the long blade cut off his right arm. "Boss!" The others roared in anger. They all looked different. Some were like skeletons, some were handsome middle-aged, and some had gray eyebrows like old men. However, all of them had a profound cultivation level. It was impossible to guess the depth of their cultivation level from their appearance. They pushed the formation to the extreme, and immediately broke Chu Li's restraint. Bang! The invisible force exploded. Chu Li suddenly flashed and retreated, avoiding their attack. Bang! A deep pit appeared on the ground, so deep that the bottom could not be seen. Chu Li frowned. The cultivation level of these 8 old monsters was really shocking. They were only slightly inferior to Song Wuji. It was clear that they were terrifying, and it was clear that Song Wuji was terrifying. Seeing their situation, he suddenly realized that there was a bottleneck in the later stages of cultivation. There was a limit. If the body was not complete and not strong enough, no matter how long they cultivated, they could not break through. He did not know how magical this arcane realm was to allow them to live for so long, but they could not compare to Song Wuji's 1,000 years of cultivation. It was clear that the path of cultivation did not become stronger with time. Bang! Deep pits exploded one after another. Chu Li dodged in a panic. Jingda's arm was pressed back by him, and it was not obvious that he was cut off. The formation of the 8 of them was getting stronger, and the room for Chu Li to escape was getting smaller. Qing Yuan and Lu Qingxue clenched their fists, wanting to go forward and help, but reason stopped them. Chapter 24-25. Qing Yuan turned his head and said, "Qing Shui, let's go first." Lu Qingxue glared at him coldly. Qing Yuan said, "We're not leaving because we're afraid of death, but for Yuanci. If we're here, he won't be able to escape in peace. If we leave, with his martial arts, even if he can't beat us, he can still escape." Lu Qingxue frowned slightly, her eyes flashing, and nodded lightly. "That makes sense." Qing Yuan hurriedly said, "Then Qing Shui, you go first." "You go first, I'll take a look." Lu Qingxue said, "After all, this is the dancing butterfly sect's territory. I have a way to escape." "Qing Shui." Qing Yuan's face darkened and he snorted. "You still don't understand? If you don't leave now, you won't be able to. Do you want the entire dancing butterfly sect to be ordered by them and fight for them?" He understood the Tianfeng sect's wishful thinking at a glance. Although the dancing butterfly sect wasn't the top sect, they had a complicated relationship. Every sect had a female disciple from the dancing butterfly sect, and although they didn't seem strong, they were the most powerful. Moreover, the majority of the dancing butterfly sect's disciples were female, and each of them was as beautiful as flowers and jade, which was the most effective way to persuade others. Since ancient times, seduction had always been successful. Once the Tianfeng sect obtained the dancing butterfly sect's disciples, they could greatly weaken the other sect's resistance. Therefore, they would rather subdue the dancing butterfly sect than destroy the flying heaven sect to establish their power. Once Lu Qingxue fell into their hands, the dancing butterfly sect's disciples would definitely yield. At that time, the Tianfeng sect would definitely be powerful, and the Great Dream sect would have nothing to do with it. This was a serious matter, and he couldn't help but be angry. He believed that Lu Qingxue also understood this, but she was still so stubborn and didn't care about friendship. She didn't take advantage of Wu Yuanxi's fierce battle to escape. There really are smart people." A light laugh suddenly sounded. Behind them, 4 gray-robed elders appeared. One look and it was obvious that they were from the same group as the previous 8 gray-robed elders. They were all old monsters from the Arcana realm. Although they looked middle-aged and didn't look old, they had a unique aura around them. It was as if the world was flowing around them, and the vicissitudes between their brows were especially strong. This was the mark left behind by time, and no one could get rid of it. 12 people, all of them had come. Qing Yuan's heart turned cold, and he smiled bitterly at Lu Qingxue. All schemes were a joke in the face of absolute power. Even though he had the power of deduction, He couldn't deduce anything about these 12 fellows, nor could he deduce anything about Wu Yuanxi. He was like a small boat in a huge wave. He felt bitter and said in a low voice, "Qing Shui, I'll bring up the rear. You go." Lu Qingxue gently shook her head and said, "You're still hoping for a fluke even now? I've already made Dream Clouds the sect master, and I'm no longer the sect master. If I die, so be it. I can't just let them wreak havoc in Dancing Butterfly sect." Sigh. Qing Yuan's smile became increasingly bitter. He was not as decisive as a woman. Knowing that there would be a great calamity, he still had the heart of a fluke. Now it seemed that he would not be able to escape with his life, and the ambition of the Great Dream sect would vanish like smoke in thin air. Suddenly, Chu Li let out a long howl and unsheathed the heavenly demonic blade from his waist once again. Everyone felt the world darken. When the light returned, a gray-robed old man was already dead. His head was separated from his body and fell to the ground. "Fifth brother!" The 4 old men in front of Qing Yuan and Lu Qingxue roared. They immediately lost their smiles. Ignoring Qing Yuan and Lu Qingxue, they shot toward Chu Li. The other 7 figures quickly flashed, allowing the 4 men to enter. Suddenly, they formed a formation of 11 people. Chu Li felt a huge force surging toward him, wanting to crush him into pieces. The heavenly demonic scripture quickly circulated, and he performed the heavenly demonic aerial mastery technique. The life and death scripture circulated, controlling the earth. Heaven and earth formed a small world under his control, dispelling the huge force from the outside world. Their power was too great, and it was gradually destroying the small world he had formed. He raised his voice and shouted, "Sect Leader Qing, Senior Lu, you 2 go first. I'll leave immediately." Lu Qingxue asked, "Can you hold on?" "No problem." Chu Li smiled. "They can't do anything to me." "Qing Shui, hurry up and leave." Qing Yuan hurriedly urged. "Yuan-si, don't force yourself." Chu Li nodded. Qing Yuan pulled Lu Qingxue and left. The remaining 11 gray-robed elders did not care at all, and attacked Chu Li like a storm. They had been friends for 10,000 years. Even if they had disagreements and stumbled when they were together, it was still a friendship of 10,000 years. They could not tolerate their companions being killed, and they had to take revenge no matter what. Moreover, Chu Li was the sect leader of the Flying Heaven sect. Chu Li felt like he was on the verge of collapse, and he would be destroyed at any time. He waved toward the sky, and at the same time, he visualized a pattern in his mind. Suddenly, a tyrannical force appeared in the sky. This tyrannical force penetrated straight into his body from the Baihui Hall. Boom! A sudden clap of thunder sounded in his mind. Then, many Buddhas and demons began chanting at the same time, and they formed hand seals. Unknowingly, the heavenly spirit scripture was also activated. The tyrannical force that was supposed to penetrate into his body could not do so under their concerted efforts, and directly drifted away. There seemed to be a scream in the void, and then the tyrannical force disappeared without a trace. However, this time, Chu Li's crisis was resolved. This powerful force blocked the palm energy of the 11 elders, and messed up the formation, giving Chu Li a chance to breathe. The heavenly demonic blade was unsheathed again. This time, he used the blade technique that he and Lu Yurong had comprehended together. The blade force was leisurely, but it cut off the necks of 3 gray-robed elders in one breath. Then, he stood in the void, and looked down at the remaining 8 elders with a cold smile. The 8 gray-robed elders stared at him, and they wanted to eat him alive. However, Chu Li sneered. "Today, even if I die, I will kill all of you. What dream of unifying the heavenly demonic realm, what a joke. If you're not afraid of death, come at me." The 8 gray-robed elders did not move, and their eyes were as bright as fire. When one of them died, they were enraged and wanted nothing more than to tear Chu Li into pieces. When 2 of them died, they were even more enraged. Now that they had captured Chu Li, they could not let him die immediately. They had to torture him continuously so that he could not die even if he wanted to. When the third person died, they felt a chill in their hearts, and they felt that something was wrong. When the fourth person died, they were already afraid, and their bodies were tense, and they had the intention of retreating. After living for 10,000 years, people would think that they had nothing to live for, and that they were tired of living and wanted to escape early. However, the truth was the opposite. The longer they lived, the more they wanted to live and the more they yearned for life. All of their goals were to ascend, and when they reached the upper heaven, they would have a longer lifespan, and the way to ascend was to unify the heavenly demonic realm. If it was not for ascension, they would not do such a thing. They originally thought that it was difficult to find a master who could threaten their lives, and they could do whatever they wanted. However, they encountered Chu Li's heavenly demonic blade technique, and he had already killed 4 of their companions. Would they be next? Chapter 24-26. Chu Li held the heavenly demon blade and stood in the air, looking down at the 8 gray-robed elders. From their expressions, there was no sign of retreat. Instead, their eyes were filled with murderous intent, as if they were ready to pounce on him at any time. With Chu Li's sharp senses, he knew what they were thinking. He sneered to himself. The older one was, the more afraid they were of death. He glanced at the crowd. I can only kill one person now. Why don't all of you come at me together? You can kill me even if you lose one person. The 8 gray-robed elders cursed under their breath when they heard him. The more Chu Li said this, the more they did not believe him. They felt that it was a lie to trick them. Besides, even if he was telling the truth, they would lose one person if they went up. Was it really not their turn? Thinking of death, they felt an inexplicable fear, and their desire to retreat grew stronger. Boss, in my opinion, we should deal with the butterfly dance sect first. A gray-robed elder said slowly. His body was like a skeleton, and the muscles on his face were barely visible. His expression was indescribably ferocious. He hated Chu Li to the core and was filled with murderous intent. However, he was more afraid of Chu Li. He had personally experienced the unpredictability of the heavenly demon blade technique. There was no way to avoid it. That blade cut off his arm. What if it was his neck? If it was any other blade that cut off their neck, they could still use a secret skill to save their lives. However, the heavenly demon blade was strange. Once they were killed by it, they would die for good. Just look at their 4 companions lying on the ground. If the heavenly demon blade was not so strange, they would have been resurrected by now. They had not lived in the arcane realm for 10,000 years in vain. They had consumed countless precious medicines, and ordinary weapons could not hurt them at all. Even if they were killed, they could be resurrected with the precious medicines they consumed. However, they had encountered the heavenly demon blade. Jingde frowned and stared at Chu Li as if he was trying to see through him. Chu Li smiled and waved the heavenly demon blade. Using the heavenly demon blade technique consumes a lot of inner energy. I can only use it a few times. There's only one left. Do you want to test if the blade is still sharp? Alright, Jingde said slowly. We've underestimated the heroes of the world. Chu Li said, do you really think that you're invincible after staying in the arcane realm for 10,000 years? There are many masters who can defeat you. Not to mention anything else, you can't even deal with Song Wuji of the Grandmaster Heavenly Realm. Song Wuji. Jingde snorted and said, are you trying to provoke us to fight Song Wuji? After they came out, they also heard the report from the Tianfeng sect. They knew that the strongest master in the world today was Song Wuji of the Grandmaster Realm. Although they were unhappy that a Grandmaster of the Grandmaster Realm had taken the title of number 1 in the world, they did not have the intention to challenge him. They didn't want to do useless things, they just wanted to unify the Sky Demon Realm as soon as possible and ascend to the heavens. As for Song Wuji, as long as he didn't provoke them, they wouldn't care if he was the world's number one. Chu shook his head and sighed. Looks like your brains have become rusty after being in the arcane realm for 10,000 years. Zheng De stared at him with a gloomy expression. Why do you say that? Chu scoffed. Song Wuji is the world's number one master. This is publicly acknowledged. So what? It's impossible for him to run over here and unify the Sky Demon realm. He's not our enemy. Zheng De sneered. We don't need to deal with him. Chu shook his head and said, if you want to unify the Sky Demon realm, dealing with Song Wuji is a shortcut. Zheng De stared at him. He was wary of his words. Chu said, if you can defeat Song Wuji, think about it, the title of the world's number one master will belong to you. Zheng De and the others nodded. Initially, they were full of confidence in defeating Song Wuji and did not take him seriously, but now they were wary. If Song Wuji could defeat this guy in front of them, it would not be easy to deal with him. Chu said, I have the Sky Demon Blade, and the cost of using the Sky Demon Blade is very high. Song Wuji doesn't have it. He's relying on his own ability. Of course, as the master of the Thunder Pool, we can't underestimate him with the Thunder Seal. This is also the reason why he's the world's number one master. Without the Thunder Seal, he won't be the world's number one master. Zheng De sneered. What are you trying to say? Chu sheathed his blade and shook his head. As long as you eliminate Song Wuji or defeat him, the world's number one master will belong to you. We, the people of the Sky Demon realm, respect the strong. When that time comes, your prestige will be unprecedented. With a single command, many sects will come to join you. Isn't that better than fighting each sect? Using force to suppress them, fighting each sect is the dumbest method. We don't know how long it will take. Every Sky Demon is stubborn. The more you try to suppress them, the more they will resist. He laughed as he said, You still want to use this stupid method, it's really ridiculous. The person who suggested this idea must be trying to harm you. When you unify the Sky Demon realm, I'm afraid your lifespan will be over, and you'll be working for someone else. Zheng De and the 7 people around him looked at each other, their faces dark. Even though they were wary of Chu, when they heard these words, they still felt a little annoyed. If Chu had said all this before the battle, they would not have cared at all. They would not even have bothered to listen. At that time, they felt that with the 12 of them and the help of the arcane realm, the Heavenly Wind sect would be able to sweep through the heavenly demonic realm. Wherever they went, they would be able to subdue all the other sections. Now that 4 of their companions were killed by Chu, their initial arrogance disappeared, and they began to reflect. Suddenly, they felt that Chu was right. It would be much easier to defeat Song Wuji and become the world's number one, than conquer the sections. Heavenly demons respected the strong the most. If the world's number one were to be subdued, it would not be embarrassing for them to surrender, and they would not resist fiercely. They only wanted to cultivate with all their might, endure humiliation, and surpass them. This way, the speed of unifying the Sky Demon realm would be faster, and they would ascend even faster. Chu said, There's still something I don't understand. Why can I ascend after unifying the Sky Demon realm? You're still young, of course you don't know, Zheng De said proudly. This is a secret of heaven and earth. There's no harm in telling you. You won't be able to do it anyway. Chu smiled and nodded. Zheng De said, The path of ascension is divided into 2 paths. One is merit, and the other is virtue. Merit is the work of creation, and virtue is personal cultivation. As long as you unify the Sky Demon realm, you'll be able to ascend. As long as you cultivate the martial arts of the upper level to perfection, you'll be able to ascend too. Chu frowned. Can't you cultivate a martial art to perfection after 10,000 years? No. Zheng De slowly shook his head. Chu was confused. You're not that weak, are you? What do you know? Another elder in a gray robe shouted. Do you think it's easy to cultivate the upper-level heaven martial arts to perfection? Chu Li nodded. It seemed like Shao Qi ascended without much effort. Of course, this was also because of Shao Qi's luck and encounters. She had a deep foundation in the lower realm, and after experiencing hardship and pain, coupled with her exceptional comprehension and unique cold temperament, she entered the world but left it, and her pure heart was not tainted by the mortal world. In the end, she encountered a martial art that was coincidentally compatible with her, and she reached perfection in one go, thus ascending. It was not easy to fulfill all these conditions, but he felt that it was not difficult to cultivate the upper-level heaven martial arts to perfection. The shorter you live, the easier it is, and the longer you live, the harder it is. You'll know once you cultivate it. Jing De shook his head and smiled. If it's that easy, people who can ascend won't be so rare. Chu Li nodded. Then I'll take my leave. Chapter 24-27. Chu Li smiled. Why, do you still want to fight? Wu Yuanci, you used the Sky Devil Blade this time, and that's why we let you off the hook. Will you still use the Sky Devil Blade next time? Jing De said coldly. The Sky Devil Blade isn't that easy to use. Chu Li raised his eyebrows and smiled. Do you know the truth about the Sky Demon Blade? The Sky Demon Blade is an ominous blade because it will devour its owner. Zheng De sneered and glanced at him. The owner of the Sky Demon Blade will die in the hands of the Sky Demon Blade. This is unchangeable. Let me ask you, can you abandon him now? Chu Li shook his head. No. The power of the Sky Demon Blade was astonishing, and he had yet to fully unleash the power of the Sky Demon Blade. Only when he could truly control the blade to the point where it was invisible, or even to the point where he could control the blade chi to the point where it could take form, would it be considered the true Sky Demon Blade technique. However, this required a huge amount of spiritual energy. His current spiritual energy was not enough. If he continued to cultivate the cultivation of spirit, he would definitely reach the standard. By then, even Song Wuji would not be his opponent. Unfortunately, it needed to be slowly improved. The cultivation of spirit could not be done by coincidence. It had to be accumulated step by step. It was impossible for him to abandon the Sky Demon Blade now. Zheng De nodded. You know that the Sky Demon Blade will devour its owner, but you still can't bear to abandon it. You will sink deeper and deeper into it. It is impossible to throw it away. In the end, you will be devoured and no one can escape. Chu Li said, No one can escape? As far as I know, no one can escape. Zheng De sneered. We don't have to kill you. You will die by the Sky Demon Blade. Chu Li smiled. Let's wait and see. Goodbye. Zheng De and the others looked at him coldly as he disappeared. Boss, are we really going to let him go? Zheng Ba gritted his teeth and asked slowly. The others looked at Zheng De scoffed. We'll let him go for now. We'll kill him next time. But, Zheng Ba frowned. As long as he has the Sky Demon Blade, we won't have a chance to kill him. In fact, as long as everyone swarmed him, they would be able to kill him regardless of the number of casualties. However, everyone was terrified and did not dare to risk their lives with him. They could only let him leave. Zheng De Deo. His Sky Demon Blade can only be used a few times, let's not worry about it for now. Zheng Ba and the other 6 frowned. Regardless of Wu Yuanci's words, their first step in unifying the Heaven Demon Realm was to destroy the Flying Heaven sect to establish their might. However, with Wu Yuanci around, it was impossible for them to destroy the Flying Heaven sect. Zheng De sneered. How many people can he kill alone? How many people could Wu Yuanci kill if he allowed the disciples of the Tianfeng sect to attack the Flying Heaven sect? It can also force him to use the Sky Devil Blade. Zheng Ba and the others nodded slowly, feeling that this was a good idea. After living for 10,000 years, they valued their lives more and more. However, they valued their own lives more and more. They were indifferent to the lives of others, even if the person was a disciple of the Heavenly Wind School. After these disciples of the Tianfeng sect entered the arcane realm, their cultivation levels had increased tremendously. They were all top-notch masters. No matter how powerful the Flying Heaven sect was, they would not be able to withstand the attacks of these masters. No matter how powerful Chu Li was, he was only one person. As long as a few top-notch experts were sent to keep him occupied, the remaining disciples of the Tianfeng sect would then go on a killing spree. By then, the Flying Heaven sect would be completely annihilated. At that time, Wu Yuanxi would be left alone, and there would be nothing to fear. I'm just afraid that he'll do something desperate. Jingba thought about it. We're in the arcane realm. What's the use of him doing something desperate? Zhengde said. The others nodded. If they hid in the arcane realm, Wu Yuanxi would not be able to find them no matter how powerful he was. If all the disciples of the Tianfeng sect hid in the arcane realm, Wu Yuanxi would not be able to take revenge. They would have to cultivate for a while more and find a way to restrain the Sky Devil Blade. No matter how powerful the Sky Devil Blade was, it was only a blade. It could not be invincible. There would always be a way to restrain it. Chu Li suddenly appeared in the sect leader's basilica in a flash. He sat on the armchair in the middle of the basilica. With a flick of his finger, a gust of wind hit the jade plate in the southeast corner of the basilica. The jade plate in the southwest corner was to summon him, while the one in the southeast corner was for him to summon others. Sitting in the armchair, he frowned and pondered. Whether he could lure these old demons to Song Wuji was still unknown. They had stayed in the arcane realm for 10,000 years, so their minds were not very clear. He could see that it was not that the older one was, the more sly and cunning they became. What he really cared about was the failure of the enlightened master's descent. Why did it fail? Was it because of Zheng De and the others' formation, or was it because he did not visualize enough? He had already invited the enlightened master, and was about to enter his body, but he was suddenly scared away. Could it be because of the many Buddhas and demons in his mind? He thought about it and decided to try it again. At this moment, hurried footsteps were heard. Hu Tianlai, Sang Qingyun, Hu Zongjian, and Wan Ren hurried in and fist saluted. Sect leader summoned us. Is there something important? Hu Tianlai asked as soon as he sat down. Under normal circumstances, people would be sent to greet them instead of using the jade plate to summon them. They would only use the jade plate if there was an emergency. Chu Li nodded. The Tianfeng sect's arcane realm is open. Do you know about it? Arcane realm? Hu Tianlai was shocked. That's impossible, right? Chu Li scoffed. Hu Tianlai was stunned. Is the arcane realm really open? Chu Li said, it's the Tianfeng sect's arcane realm. This is bad. Hu Tianlai's expression changed. He turned to look at Sang Qingyun and the others. The Tianfeng sect's first target is us. Sang Qingyun's face darkened. Sect leader, is this news accurate? Chu Li nodded. I just fought with a few old monsters from the Tianfeng sect. They only came out after 10,000 years in the arcane realm. I'm guessing the Tianfeng sect will not give up. They will move all their disciples to the second sect. Sect leader. Wan Ren hesitated. Entering the second sect meant that the Tianfeng sect had entered a hidden phase. Other than a few core elders, the rest of the disciples did not know where they were. Once they entered, they would be cut off from the outside world. It was a refuge. This meant that the Tianfeng sect had entered a period of seclusion and could not appear in the near future. This was a huge blow to the Tianfeng sect. It was like a martial arts master hiding in a corner. Chu Li said, is the dignity of the sect more important or the lives of the disciples? If any one of those old monsters comes, you will not be able to escape. Moreover, with the arcane realm, the disciples of the Tianfeng sect will become stronger. If they want to unify the heavenly demonic realm, the other sects can just submit, but we will not survive. Sigh. Hu Tianlai and the others sighed. For a moment they could not react. It was as if the world had changed. It was too unreal. Although Chu Li was the leader of a sect, the news was too shocking. They could not accept it. Chu Li said, "Stop? Gather? Unloaded?" Yes. Although Hu Tianlai and the others wanted to object, Chu Li's authority was too strong for them to resist. They could only agree. Chu Li said, "Everyone must retreat to the second sect within a day." Yes. Hu Tianlai and the others gritted their teeth. Sang Qingyun said, "Sect leader, is there no other way? Unless we kill the Tianfeng sect and destroy the arcane realm." Chu Li said. Sang Qingyun and the others smiled bitterly. Chapter 24-28. The existence of an arcane realm was the most mysterious. Its opening, closing, and even disappearance were unpredictable. Even the Great Dream sect could not predict the opening and closing of an arcane realm. Even if the secret territory was opened, outsiders would not be able to predict the location of the secret territory. Only the disciples of the Heavenly Wind sect knew the existence and location of the secret territory. Even most of the disciples of the Heavenly Wind sect did not know the location of the secret territory. The fewer people who knew about it, the lower the possibility of it being leaked. What was more frightening was that even if they knew about the arcane realm, non-disciples of the sect could not enter. Even if the sect leader was resourceful enough to find the arcane realm, there was nothing he could do. It was impossible to destroy the arcane realm. Chu Li waved his hand. "Go." Hu Tianlai and the other three closed-fist saluted and strode away. They were proficient in the steps of moving sections. They did not need Chu Li's instructions to complete it. Chu Li only needed to give the order. Chu Li got up and went to the door of the basilica. He stood on the steps and looked at the sky. He squinted his eyes and visualized a picture in his mind. There was a faint sound of thunder in the void. Then, a huge force descended from the sky and penetrated into his Baihui acupoint. The Buddhas and heavenly demons in the void of his mind opened their eyes at the same time. They formed a seal with both hands and hurriedly chanted. Suddenly, a huge wave surged in his mind. For some reason, the scripture of heavenly spirit was also activated. Chu Li heard a scream. The huge force could not enter his Baihui acupoint. It was forced out of him and dissipated in the air. Chu Li suddenly realized. It turned out that the void of his mind refused to allow external forces to enter. That was why the huge enlightened master's power could not enter his body and could only dissipate in the air. Chu Li heard the scream. He did not know what happened to the enlightened master. However, it should be fine because it did not enter his body. As far as he knew, after an enlightened master entered the body, it would consume a lot of energy. If it wanted to leave the body, it would also consume a lot of energy. That was why 100 years of life was consumed. If it could not enter the body, it did not need to leave. He shook his head helplessly. He could not perform the enlightened master's descent. A wry smile appeared on his face. If he knew that he could not perform the enlightened master's descent, he would not have wanted to be the sect leader. However, when he thought about the knowledge and secrets he obtained, it was worth it. He suddenly flashed and appeared outside the basilica of the Great Dream sect. Qing Yuan and Lu Qingxue appeared outside the hall. Qing Yuan cupped his fists and laughed. "Yuan Si, you're finally back." Chu Li gave a fist salute and smiled. "I was lucky. It's not easy to escape from those old monsters." Qing Yuan praised. "Luckily you're here, Yuan Si. Otherwise we would have lost our lives this time." Lu Qingxue asked, "How did they let you go?" Chu Li said, "I killed 4 of them." Qing Yuan's eyes widened. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. "They're old, but they're more afraid of death than ordinary people. That's why they let me go. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to escape." Lu Qingxue looked at him deeply and snorted. trying to be brave. Chu Li chuckled. Why would I want all of you to die with me? Qing Yuan said, even Azura are afraid of death, not to mention these 10,000-year-old monsters. However, even if we can avoid it this time, we won't be able to avoid it next time, especially the Flying Heaven sect. Chu Li said helplessly, I've already asked the faction to relocate, but this is only a temporary measure. We've also lured them to Song Wuji's side, so they might not succeed. Qing Yuan sighed. We can only work together to eradicate them. We can't do it. Lu Qingxue shook her head. I'm afraid everyone is surrendering. Qing Yuan frowned and pondered. Chu Li asked, Sect Leader Qing, do you have no idea at all? The Heaven Forbidden sect had once unified the heavenly demonic realm. Logically speaking, they must have some extraordinary methods, and they might even have a trump card to deal with such a situation. Qing Yuan said, the cultivation level of these old monsters is shocking, but what's more frightening is their martial arts. The depth of their attainment is far beyond our reach. Chu Li nodded. Without the heavenly demonic blade, we can't do anything to them. Their bodies are also terrifyingly strong. What do you think, Sect Leader Qing? Do you have any idea? Sigh. Qing Yuan hesitated. Chu Li immediately knew that there was a way. He scoffed and said, Sect Leader Qing, we're already at a time like this, and you're still hiding it. Are you going to wait until we're dead to keep our trump cards for future generations to remember us as they use them? Sigh. Qing Yuan shook his head and sighed. Fine, I'll say it. Chu Li smiled. What method do you have to deal with them? They have a long lifespan. This is certainly a strength, but it's also a weakness, Qing Yuan said. Actually, you should have thought of this, shouldn't you? Chu Li was stunned, and then came to a realization. Their lifespan has already reached its limit, and they can't afford to waste it? Yes. Qing Yuan said slowly. Chu Li frowned. They must know their weakness, and will definitely pay attention to how to waste their lifespan. My sect has a treasure. Qing Yuan sighed. He really did not want to take out such a treasure, but in this situation, he had no choice. Once Wu Yuanci was finished, the Great Dream sect would definitely be finished. Although this treasure could take care of those old monsters, it also depended on who was using it. If he used it, he would probably be killed by the old monsters before he could even use it. This was because the treasure required a huge amount of inner energy to use, and it also needed a period of time. The requirements were quite harsh. However, any treasure that went against the will of the heavens had extremely harsh requirements to use. Lu Qingxue frowned. You're not talking about the 10,000 kill tablet, right? Yes, the 10,000 kill tablet. Qing Yuan nodded lightly. Lu Qingxue scoffed. What's the use of something that goes against the will of the heavens? She turned to look at Chu Li and scoffed. The 10,000 kill tablet goes against the will of the heavens. Once it is used, all living things within a mile radius will die. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Lu Qingxue scoffed. This evil item can only be sealed, and should not be exposed to the world. Chu Li asked, Is there really such an evil item? There's nothing wrong with this item. If it's used for good, then it's good. If it's used for evil, then it's naturally evil. Qing Yuan scoffed. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. Good was good and evil was evil. Some treasures were indeed hard to distinguish between good and evil, depending on how they were used. However, a pure killing item like the 10,000 kill tablet was indeed an evil item. Lu Qingxue said, Once this item is used, it will damage the Yin karma. It's better not to use it. If we don't use it, how are we going to deal with those old monsters? Qing Yuan said impatiently. Qingxue, we can't care so much at this time. If we don't use it, we'll lose our lives. Who cares about Yin karma and Yang karma? He looked at Chu Li and said, The 10,000 kill tablet does have this flaw. Whether we use it or not depends on you, Yuanci. Chu Li sighed. Do I have a choice? Qing Yuan shook his head. Either use it or die. Lu Qingxue frowned and stared at him. I believe there are other ways. Qing Yuan smiled bitterly. Qingxue, I'm not that godly. Lu Qingxue scoffed. You always have two ways to do things. Other than the 10,000 kill tablet, there must be other ways. Sigh. Qing Yuan smiled helplessly. Lu Qingxue said, Don't play tricks. Look at the situation now. Chu Li shook his head and laughed. Sect leader Qing, you're not thinking of killing two birds with one stone, are you? Chapter 24-29. Then hurry up and tell me, Chu Li said impatiently. Qing Yuan said, There is a secret skill that can rob life force. Chu Li frowned. Could it be the sky-devouring technique? It's not the sky-devouring technique. Qing Yuan shook his head. Although the sky-devouring technique is strong, it can only rob vitality. It has not reached the point of robbing life force. Chu Li said, Then what is it? Qing Yuan said, Absorption technique. Chu Li pondered for a moment and shook his head. He had never heard of this absorption technique. This is considered a sorcery. Qing Yuan frowned. Compared to the kill tablet, the real sorcery simply absorbs life force to replenish one's vitality. Chu Li said, It can't replenish life force? It can't. Qing Yuan sighed. It's not that easy to replenish life force. It's already amazing to be able to extract life force to replenish vitality. Chu Li nodded. That's true, but compared to the sky-devouring technique, it's still inferior. It's said that the sky-devouring technique extracts vitality to replenish vitality. Therefore, the sky-devouring technique is not considered a sorcery, but the absorption technique is. Qing Yuan shook his head helplessly. Otherwise, it wouldn't have fallen into our hands. Chu Li smiled. In that case, sect leader Qing has cultivated the absorption technique? This. Qing Yuan hesitated. Lu Qingxue scoffed. Can you not cultivate it? You must have cultivated it. All right, I've cultivated it. Qing Yuan looked at her helplessly and sighed. But it's not that easy to cast it. Takes enough time and the opponent needs to be weak enough. Chu Li frowned. Weak enough? Yes, it's best to knock him unconscious or on the verge of death. This is a little difficult. Chu Li smiled bitterly. Qing Yuan spread his hands at Lu Qingxue, showing a helpless look. There's another way, Lu Qingxue said. Qing Yuan said helplessly, What idea do you have? He felt that something was wrong. Every time Lu Qingxue opened her mouth, he would be in trouble, but he had no way to make her shut up and side with him. Lu Qingxue said, Pass the absorption technique to Yuan Si and let her cultivate it. This is a good idea. Qing Yuan was surprised and slowly nodded. I didn't think about it before. Not bad, right? Lu Qingxue scoffed. Yuan Si's comprehension is extremely good, or else she wouldn't have been able to comprehend the Sky Demon Blade technique. After practicing the Sky Demon Blade technique, practicing the Yuan absorption technique is a piece of cake. She'll be able to master it in no time. Qing Yuan looked at Chu Li and said, Yuan Si, although this is a sorcery, it's not a big deal if you don't use it. Just seal it after you've mastered it. Chu Li said, I'm afraid it's too late. I'll pass on all my experiences to you, Qing Yuan said. With your abilities, I'm sure you'll be able to master it very quickly. This technique isn't difficult. All right. Chu Li nodded slowly. That's the only way. Qing Yuan said, Qing Shui, let's listen together. Lu Qingxue snorted. Forget it, I'm not interested. All right then. Qing Yuan smiled and said, I don't want to dirty your ears with such sorcery. Lu Qingxue rolled her eyes at him and left. Qing Yuan hurriedly said, Let's hurry up and master it as soon as possible. He felt that time was running out. If they really came looking for him, his life would be in danger. Even the lives of the disciples of the sect would not be spared. The disciples of the Great Dream sect had not been transferred yet because it was a matter of great importance. After some deduction, he felt that there was a chance of survival. As long as he grasped it, he would be able to survive. If he could not grasp this chance of survival, it would be useless even if he transferred them. He would not be able to escape death. Chu Li nodded. Cheng Yuan recited the incantation. Chu Li memorized it in one go and began to cultivate it. He understood it in one go and immediately understood it in his heart. This vitality absorption technique was a section of the ageless longevity technique. Compared to the ageless longevity technique, it was much simpler. He directly pushed the first level. The second time was the second level. The third time was the third level. In one go, he pushed it to the 8th level. It was only 8 circulations. Cheng Yuan stared at him from the side. He was most familiar with the aura of the vitality absorption technique. He stared at Chu Li in disbelief. He watched Chu Li reach the 8th level in one go. There were 9 levels to the vitality absorption technique. The 9th level was difficult to reach. He had only cultivated to the 7th level so far. Chu Li slowly opened his eyes and smiled. Sect leader Cheng, the 8th level? Cheng Yuan hurriedly said. Chu Li sighed. I can only reach the 8th level. It seems that the 9th level is missing something. Is the incantation incomplete? It is indeed incomplete. Cheng Yuan nodded helplessly. Otherwise, it would not have fallen into our sect. But for you to be able to cultivate to the 8th level, it's really, he said with a bitter expression. He remembered that he had spent a year to cultivate the vitality absorption technique to the 4th level. Then, he spent a few more years to reach the 7th level. Although this technique was evil, it could save lives at critical times. Therefore, he cultivated it as a life-saving technique. Who would complain about having more life-saving techniques? He had spent a lot of effort to cultivate to the 7th level, but Chu Li had cultivated to the 8th level in a short period of time. People really could not be compared to each other. Chu Li smiled. Maybe it's because I've cultivated the Heavenly Demon Blade technique. Very likely. Cheng Yuan nodded. The Heavenly Demon Blade technique was the most evil of all evil. After cultivating the Heavenly Demon Blade technique, cultivating the Vitality Absorption technique was indeed insignificant. It was no wonder that it was so easy. After explaining it this way, he felt much more comfortable. Cheng Yuan sighed. No matter what, we finally have a glimmer of hope. Chu Li nodded. Then I'll go and try. UNC, you're going to look for them? Cheng Yuan's expression changed slightly. Chu Li smiled. Are you going to wait for them to come to us? They might not have the guts. Cheng Yuan frowned. In my opinion, we should wait and see. Chu Li looked at him doubtfully. Cheng Yuan said, maybe they really went to look for Song Wuji. Chu Li thought about it. I'm afraid not. Cheng Yuan smiled and said, the thoughts of these old monsters are different from ours. They can do things that we find inconceivable. All right. Chu Li nodded slowly. He was not anxious. Anyway, the disciples of the Flying Heaven sect had been transferred. He had nothing to worry about. The disciples of the Dancing Butterfly sect had also been transferred. Lu Jianfei followed them. The Heavenly Wind sect would not be able to find the Sword Demon sect for a while, so he could sit and wait to see what these old demons were up to. If he really went to look for Song Wuji, it would really save him a lot of trouble. Sect leader Cheng, can you find the location of the arcane realm? Chu Li asked. Cheng Yuan shook his head without hesitation. I can't find it. Chu Li frowned. Cheng Yuan sighed. I really can't find it. If it could be found, it wouldn't be called an arcane realm. It's extremely secretive. Chu Li nodded slowly. Cheng Yuan said, it's useless even if you find it. The arcane realm of the Heavenly Wind sect can only be entered by disciples of the Heavenly Wind sect. Outsiders can't enter. I want to try, Chu Li said. Cheng Yuan waved his hand and said, there's no need to try at all. Countless people have already tried, but none of them succeeded. Among them, there was no lack of people who threw away their own sect's martial arts and cultivated the other sect's mental cultivation method, but they still failed. Chuli was surprised. You can't hide it from them? I can't hide it. This is the mystery of the arcane realm. Qing Yuan shook his head and smiled bitterly. So, Yuan Si, you don't have to waste your efforts. Chu Li sighed. Does the heavens want the Heavenly Wind sect to prosper? Indeed, the heavens want the Heavenly Wind sect to prosper. Qing Yuan nodded slowly. Anyone who opens the arcane realm first is a sect that prospers. There's nothing we can do. We can only act according to the general trend. Chu Li asked. There's a huge price to pay to go against the heavens, but we have no choice. Qing Yuan sighed. Chapter 2430. He admitted it on the surface, but in his heart, he was determined to try. He would not stop until he saw the arcane realm for himself. Qing Yuan saw through his thoughts and sighed. You're not giving up, are you? Chu Li said, I have to try. I'm not convinced if I surrender without trying. All right, Qing Yuan said helplessly. You can try. If it doesn't work, you can use Vitality Technique to deal with them. Vitality Technique targets their weaknesses. Even if you can't kill them, you can still get rid of one or two of them. It will instill fear in them so they won't dare to act recklessly. He did not wait for Chu Li to speak and continued, First, we have to destroy their arrogance. Don't think that they can do whatever they want in the world. Chu Li shook his head. It's useless. How can it be useless? Qing Yuan scoffed. They've lost their arrogance and won't be so extreme in their actions, giving us a chance to breathe. What's the use of breathing? Chu Li said. If we don't surrender, what about the other sects? Sect leader Qing, you're a person of virtue and prestige. Can you convince them to fight against the Tianfeng sect together? Qing Yuan choked and slowly sighed. Seeking benefits and avoiding harm was fundamental, especially for a sect leader. He could not act according to his temper and act rashly. He had to prioritize the interests of the sect. For a sect, surrendering was far more beneficial than resisting. The world was so big that there was no need to worry about having no enemies. The Tianfeng sect would never let go of a mortal enemy like the Flying Heaven sect. The Flying Heaven sect had no other choice but to fight to the death. Under the destructive power of these old demons, any resistance would be futile. Chu Li fist saluted. That's it. Sect leader Qing, I'll take my leave first. Be careful. Qing Yuan fist saluted and could only say goodbye. Chu Li suddenly disappeared in a flash. As soon as he disappeared, Lu Qingxue floated in and frowned. Seeing that Chu Li was not there, she scoffed. Did Yuan Si learn Vitality Technique? Yes. Qing Yuan smiled bitterly. Qingxue, we've been friends for many years, but it can't compare to our friendship with Yuan Si. Although Yuan Si is intelligent, she is simple, kind, and has no intention of harming others. You, on the other hand, are different. You rely on your intelligence to scheme at every turn. Lu Qingxue said coldly, Whoever trusts you will suffer. Qing Yuan smiled and said, Thank you for your compliment. I scheme against others, but I won't scheme against you, Qingxue. Scheming against others has become your instinct. You don't care if it's me or not. Lu Qingxue said coldly, Once UNC learns the energy absorption technique, he'll have to deal with those guys, and you can hide behind him. I also want to stand up and block them, but unfortunately, Qing Yuan revealed a bitter expression. He really wanted to defeat the 12 old monsters in one fell swoop and show off his heroic spirit in front of Lu Qingxue to win her heart. However, the world would not change according to his will, and it would only make him look incompetent. Lu Qingxue said, Then what else is there to say? Goodbye. Qing Shui Yu. Qing Yuan quickly waved his hand. Lu Qingxue, however, ignored him and disappeared. Chu Li appeared at the foot of the Tianfeng sect. He stood on a treetop halfway up the mountain and observed the Tianfeng sect. His omniscient mirror had already broken through the mountain protection formation, and he could see the situation inside the Tianfeng sect. With the strengthening of his spirit and soul, the omniscient mirror's ability to see through the illusion and see through the illusion became stronger. He could directly break through the formation and see the inside clearly. With such ability, he could see through the formation in one go. He himself had a strong and profound foundation in formations. He only needed to deduce, and he would be able to break this formation and find the entrance to the formation. Moreover, even if he did not use the formation to deduce, he could directly use the omniscient mirror to see the entrance and directly walk over. However, in order to improve his cultivation in formations, he still used the formation to deduce and then directly used the omniscient mirror to see through the void. There was a solemn atmosphere in the Tianfeng sect. There was no joy at all, only tension and seriousness. There were not many disciples in the sect. The remaining disciples were cleaning and dealing with some miscellaneous things, but they were disciples from outside the sect. The rest of the disciples had disappeared. Chu Li thought about it and knew that they had entered the arcane realm. Once the arcane realm opened, it did not matter to the sects outside. It was possible that the entire Tianfeng sect had moved into the arcane realm. The arcane realm opened once every 10,000 years. Once it opened, it could last for up to 100 years. It would not close for a short period of time. Therefore, they could rest assured and stay inside to develop the sect. Therefore, God wanted the Tianfeng sect to prosper. If he knew in advance and intercepted them, even if the Tianfeng sect had an arcane realm, they would not have disciples. It would take a while for the Tianfeng sect to rise again. However, the disciples of the Tianfeng sect had entered the arcane realm. When they came out, they would be top-notch masters. The Flying Heaven sect would not be able to resist them. He lowered his head and drew a few lines on the ground, deducing the Tianfeng sect's mountain protection formation. 2 hours later, he raised his head to take another look and frowned. The entrance that he had deduced had moved and was not in its original position. As expected of the mountain protection formation, it could change according to the movement of the sun or the movement of the stars. He was once again immersed in his deduction. After another hour, Chu Li let out a sigh of relief and smiled. He finally understood the mystery of the mountain protection formation. His formation cultivation had improved, and he had gained a lot. He suddenly disappeared on the spot and appeared outside the Tianfeng sect leader's basilica in the next moment. The sect leader's basilica was empty. There was not a single person in it. The other places were the same. Even the sutra library was gone. It had been moved to the arcane realm. This place could be said to be an empty shell. Only 8 outer sect disciples were left to clean it. Chu Li walked around the sect leader's basilica twice, but the 8 disciples did not notice him. The mountain protection formation was activated and no one could enter. The 8 disciples were confident that no one would be able to enter, so they did not care if there was anyone. They only wanted to clean it up. If the seniors of the sect came back to take a look, they would definitely punish them if they saw that they had not cleaned up properly. Chu Li looked at the basilica from top to bottom. He used the omniscient mirror to observe, but it was all white. He could not see clearly. Among the many buildings, only the sect leader's basilica had this strange phenomenon. The other palaces and courtyards did not have this strange phenomenon. Even if there were treasures, they must have been taken away. There must be a reason why the sect leader's basilica still had this strange phenomenon. He wondered if the arcane realm would know that something had happened here. If they knew, how did they find out? If he could sense it, and with the heavenly demonic blades aura left on Zhengde and the others, he might be able to find the arcane realm. Moreover, this hazy white light made him curious. The omniscient mirror could not see clearly was not an ordinary thing. There must be something special about it. He glided into the sect leader's basilica again. The basilica only had furniture and paintings on the wall. It did not seem to be missing anything, but it gave off a feeling of emptiness. Chu Li's gaze suddenly fell on a painting. It was a painting of a crane and pine tree behind the armchair in the center. This kind of crane and pine tree was popular in the lower realm. It was the same in this realm. It was even popular in the heavenly demonic realm. Chu Li did not notice it before. Now that he looked carefully, he suddenly found something strange. He thought for a while and slowly reached out to touch the painting. However, he was blocked by an invisible force. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. His eyes lit up with excitement. It seemed that there was something strange about this painting. Could it be some kind of treasure? Suddenly, footsteps came from outside. He flashed behind a screen and saw two young men come in. They began to wipe the furniture and talked while wiping. Chapter 24:31. Sigh. The skinny young man shook his head while wiping the table. We are so unlucky. We just had to draw the worst number. Just admit it. Someone has to stay. Another chubby young man kneeled down to wipe the floor, slowly and patiently. He smiled and said, We only have a month. If we do well, the sect leader might reward us. When we enter the mystic realm, with the reward, we'll definitely be able to catch up to them. That's true, but it's impossible for us to get a reward from the faction leader. The skinny young man snorted. You know the faction leader's temper. He rarely praises people. He always criticizes them. That was before. Things are different now. The chubby young man smiled. This is a special time. Who would be willing to stay and clean the place without a reward? So what if they don't want to? Who dares to disobey the faction leader's order? Are we going to betray the faction because of this? Impossible. That's it. The skinny young man snorted. The faction leader is not afraid of us having second thoughts. Our Tianfeng faction is going to rise and shine in the world. Who would have second thoughts? Junior brother Jing, did you say that the 12 ancestral masters have lived for 10,000 years? The chubby young man asked curiously. I don't think it's possible. How could they live for 10,000 years? It's not like they went to the first heaven. Under normal circumstances they could live for 1,000 years. Some with higher cultivation strength could live for 2,000 years. Just thinking about it made them envious. Unfortunately, it was impossible to live up to 10,000 years in this realm. Otherwise, they wouldn't have to go to the first heaven. They could just live here. Yes, it should be. The skinny young man nodded. The 12 ancestral masters are clearly recorded in the faction history book. It's impossible to make a mistake. Could they be the descendants of those ancestral masters? The chubby young man asked. There were only them in the mystical realm. There were no women. The skinny young man shook his head and smiled. Besides, we have the bloodline stone. It's impossible to make a mistake. The bloodline stone could determine a person's identity. As long as someone dripped their blood on the stone, their name would be reflected. This was also to prevent other sects' disciples from impersonating them. The disciples of the heavenly demonic sect all had the ability to transform, but it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to sneak into the heavenly demonic sect. Every sect had their own methods, and sects that did not have enough methods would have been annihilated long ago. That's true. The chubby young man nodded slowly and said, When will we be able to reach that level of cultivation? This is truly earth-shattering and beyond imagination. What's the point of being powerful? 4 of them were still killed by Wu Yuanxi, the thin young man snorted. The chubby young man's expression suddenly changed. He turned his head and looked around. Then, he ran out of the hall and glanced around. When he came back, he widened his eyes and said, Senior brother Jing, are you crazy? How dare you say that? The thin young man snorted and said, "Can't you even say that? If the elders hear this, it will be terrible." The chubby young man shook his head and said, "It's not like you didn't see the elders' expressions. It's worse than if their parents had died." The thin young man sneered and curled his lip. "How can there be an immortal? Unless you're an Azura. All right, let's get to work, get to work." The chubby young man was frightened by his words and did not dare to listen any more. Otherwise, no one knew what shocking words he would say. However, the thin young man's mouth could not stay idle. After wiping the table, he began to wipe the cupboard next to him. He said, "How do you think this Wu Yuanci cultivates? It's 10,000 years. He's about the same age as us, right?" "Alas, you can't compare him like that." The chubby young man sighed. He also felt depressed. They were both young men, but Wu Yuanci was a sect leader and had an earth-shattering cultivation, while he was wiping the floor here. Just thinking about it made him feel like he had lived his life in vain. It was better to die. However, he said, it's said that this Wu Yuanci not only has amazing qualifications, but he also has amazing luck. He obtained the divine demon herb and then the heavenly demonic blade. The heavenly demonic blade is very evil. Obtaining it is like adding wings to a tiger. However, it's said that this blade is the most ominous. None of the blade owners escaped with their lives. They all died from the backlash of the heavenly demonic blade. No matter how they died, they lived a grand life. Unlike us, we can't even enter the arcane realm, and we have to wait for a month. After a month, the others will have left us behind. The thin young man angrily threw the rag on the floor. The chubby young man smiled bitterly. Others are others, but we are ourselves. We each have our own path. Maybe we'll be lucky enough to have a fortuitous encounter in the arcane realm and soar to the sky. Ha ha! The thin young man laughed and nodded. That's hard to say. As they spoke, they became happy again and were full of energy. Chuli stood at the side and shook his head with a smile. Everyone was unwilling to be ordinary. They all wanted to change their fate and soar to the sky. He was just lucky enough. He had already read their minds. They did not know where the arcane realm was. Even if something happened, there was no need for them to report it. They could escape through the secret passage, and the sect would naturally find them. They did not even know how to activate the sect-protecting formation, so there was nothing they could do. When they left the basilica, it looked brand new. Chuli went to the painting again and studied it carefully. He concentrated and sensed it. After a while, he was able to determine that there was an aura of the void on the painting. If it was someone else, they might not be able to do anything even if they knew about it. At most, they could only destroy it. Chuli had the heavenly demonic aerial manipulation technique. He could not help but feel excited. Could this painting be the entrance to the arcane realm? He thought that it was highly possible. The arcane realm had always been secretive and no one knew where the entrance was. It was somewhere between nothingness and reality, so it was not surprising that the entrance was on a painting. He concentrated all of his spirit and used the heavenly demonic aerial manipulation technique to envelop the painting. There was a loud boom in his ears. It was like a sudden clap of thunder that shook his mind. His whole body felt like it was electrocuted, numbing him uncontrollably. This shocked him, and he quickly activated the heavenly demonic scripture. His mind suddenly jumped and entered a void. It was like the void in his mind, but it was not the void in his mind. There were no Buddhas or heavenly demons. A handsome middle-aged man stood in the void. He wore a blue robe and stood with his hands behind his back. His blue robe fluttered even though there was no wind. He was elegant like a deity. The handsome middle-aged man glanced at Chuli and nodded slightly. He then slowly got into a stance and performed a set of palm technique. He then spoke in a calm and clear voice, explaining the heart technique of this palm technique. Chuli was surprised as he learned. He did not expect this to be the authentic heaven wind palm. The heart technique he was talking about was the pure heaven wind heart technique. The handsome middle-aged man activated his palm technique over and over again, and a gust of wind gradually surged in the void. The wind howled, and he actually couldn't stand steadily and was about to be blown away. However, he relied on his pure and powerful mental strength to stand steadily and watch as the man waved his palm. Every palm technique was different. The heaven wind palm technique was exquisite and its changes were extremely complicated. It was the peak of palm technique. The handsome middle-aged man kept performing palm technique. Each palm technique was different. He had already practiced 10 sets of palm technique. The wind howled and became stronger. Even he felt that it was difficult. If it were someone else, they would have been blown away by the wind and fell out of this void. Chapter 2432. Chuli had long understood that he had received the authentic teachings of Heaven Gale Palm. He was very curious as the requirements for the inheritance were too high. He could not imagine how many people in Heaven Gale sect could accept the inheritance and persevere. Those who could persevere must be extremely powerful disciples. A strong spirit was too important to a person. The stronger the spirit, the faster the inner energy could be channeled. The stronger the spirit, the faster the inner energy could be channeled, and the longer one could cultivate. Channeling inner energy was the most exhausting thing. The strength of a person's spirit could make a huge difference. One could not see the difference in 1 or 2 days, but after a year the difference would be huge. If there really was a disciple with such a strong spirit, even if his comprehension was not high, he would still be a top disciple. Moreover, the Heaven Gale Palm that he had seen was not complete. He had not seen the complete one yet because the handsome middle-aged man was still practicing. The void was filled with all kinds of chilly winds. Every time the palm technique was practiced, the palm energy would be different, forming different palm winds. These palm winds would not dissipate along with the palm energy, but instead formed chilly winds with shocking power that could corrode one's soul and soul. Chuli felt that he was becoming weaker and weaker. The raging wind was like a knife cutting at him, constantly wearing him down. The Buddhas and heavenly demons in his mind did not need his command. They were operating on their own, transforming into spiritual energy that flowed continuously to maintain his existence in this void. The ever-present wind was weakening him, forming a stalemate. He ignored the wind and stared at the handsome middle-aged man's palm technique, imprinting it in his mind and never forgetting it. In this short period of time, the handsome middle-aged man had already performed 12 palm technique. When the handsome middle-aged man stopped, he had performed 81 palm technique. Chuli felt that he had reached his limit and could not hold on for another second. The handsome middle-aged man smiled at him and suddenly turned into a ray of light, pouncing at him. Chuli could not dodge in time and could only watch. Kaboom! With an explosion, he turned into the handsome middle-aged man and began to practice the 81 palm techniques in the void. Each palm technique naturally derived a heart technique. Every time he practiced the palm technique, his spirit became stronger and his senses became clearer. He had a better control of his body, and he had never felt so agile and at ease. By the time he finished practicing the 81 sets of palm techniques, his spirit was already strong. Hence, he activated it again and practiced another 81 sets of palm techniques. He felt stronger and had a deeper understanding of the heavenly wind palm technique. Furthermore, he had a deeper understanding of the Heavenly Wind Heart Sutra. The Heavenly Wind Mental Cultivation Method was a mental cultivation method derived from these 81 sets of palm technique. It was a combination of their essence and simplified branches and leaves. Chuli was overwhelmed with emotions. He did not expect the Skywind Heart technique to be so intricate. It was so difficult to create it and he had spent so much effort on it. But now, he had mastered the 81 sets of palm techniques and had a clear understanding of the Skywind Heart technique. He greatly admired the wisdom of his predecessors. If it were him, he would not have such thoughts. Perhaps it was because he had always been in a hurry to find out the truth, and had not yet reached the stage where he could calm down and play with his mental cultivation method. He slowly woke up and his spirit returned to his body. When he opened his eyes, the basilica suddenly lit up. Then, the painting became dim, as if its essence had been lost. However, it was slowly absorbing the essence of heaven and earth. At this speed, it would take 100 years for it to recover. Chuli thought about it and shook his head. He put his palms together and bowed to the painting. He softly said that he had offended him. Then, he gently waved his hand and the painting instantly turned into ashes. Then, he suddenly disappeared from the spot. After a while, he took out another painting. This painting was exactly the same as the original one. He had already imprinted it in his mind and copied it according to the original. Moreover, he had attached his spiritual energy to it so that he could come over any time in the future. This way, outsiders would not be able to see through it. Even if the disciples of the Heavenly Wind sect really found this treasure of inheritance, they would be able to enter it and receive the teachings. However, they would only receive 36 sets of palm technique. Chuli was the most knowledgeable about the method of imparting scriptures. He had obtained it in the lower realm but had never used it. At this time, he combined the heavenly demonic aerial manipulation technique with the method of imparting scriptures and achieved the same effect as the original painting. He looked at the painting and nodded in satisfaction. Although it was just a copy, it was still his masterpiece. In the future, when the disciples of the Heavenly Wind sect had a fortuitous encounter, they would see his inheritance. It was interesting just thinking about it. He sat cross-legged on the cattail hassock in the middle of the basilica and began to cultivate the Heavenly Wind Heart technique. From the first to the second level, he went through to the 8th level in one go. Only the last level was left to be perfected. He needed to have a deeper understanding of it. He had cultivated 81 sets of palm techniques and could only advance to the 8th level. Even so, he could feel the profoundness of the Heavenly Wind Heart technique. Heavenly Wind was a formless wind. It was silent and the most suitable for sneak attacks. Unfortunately, the disciples of the Heavenly Wind sect usually walked the path of ferocity. The whistling of the wind was shocking and the speed of their body technique was astonishing. It was not inferior to the speed of the Flying Heaven sect's body technique. At this moment, Chuli understood that the Heavenly Wind sect had taken the wrong path. They blindly focused on masculinity. The Heavenly Wind palm was the opposite. It should have taken the path of gentleness. It was silent and unpredictable. Zhengde and the others did not seem to be able to achieve samadhi. No wonder they could not ascend after cultivating for 10,000 years. It was because they had taken the wrong path. He no longer forced himself to cultivate. He got up and walked around the entire Heavenly Wind sect, but he still could not find any clues about the arcane realm. Even with the Heavenly Wind palm, it was useless for him to derive the location of the arcane realm. In the end, he frowned and gave up on deriving the arcane realm. Instead, he used the all-seeing divine power to sense Qing Yuan's location. The next moment, he suddenly disappeared and reappeared in the forest of a valley. This was a wild valley. The forest was lush and overgrown with weeds. There was a pool in the valley. The water plants covered most of the water surface. Some beasts were drinking by the pool. It was unusually quiet. Chuli glanced at the valley curiously. He vaguely found some traces of people, but without the omniscient mirror, he would not have been able to find them. They had been carefully covered up. It was obvious that there was a secret. His expression changed slightly. He suddenly retracted the omniscient mirror. He frowned and shook his head. It was Qing Yuan. Qing Yuan was in the forest next to him, just above him. 100 meters away, he was standing on top of a tree looking down at the valley. He seemed to be studying the valley. It was obvious that he had found something wrong with the valley. Chu was curious how Qing Yuan found this place. Could this be the entrance to the arcane realm? If it really was the entrance to the arcane realm, how did Qing Yuan find it? He immediately thought that Qing Yuan might have planted an informant in the Heavenly Wind sect and developed a spy. Thus, he left a trace for Qing Yuan to track him here. He could not help but get excited when he thought of this. Qing Yuan might really be able to find the entrance to the arcane realm. There were spies from the Great Dream sect in the Heavenly Wind sect. What about the Flying Heaven sect? When he thought of this, he became anxious. He wanted to go back and investigate carefully. If the second sect was discovered, it would be the most dangerous. Qing Yuan did not need to do much. He only needed to reveal the location of the second sect, and the Flying Heaven sect would immediately be in danger. Chapter 2433. He took a deep breath, suppressed his anxiety, and continued to stare at Qing Yuan. Lu Qingxue was not by his side, and Qing Yuan was watching alone. Chu was even more certain that he might be pursuing the arcane realm. However, since he could not enter the arcane realm, why would Qing Yuan pursue it? Could it be that what he said back then was not true? Then he shook his head. Qing Yuan knew how to lie and play tricks, but what he said would not be false. This was also where Qing Yuan's bottom line was. Otherwise, as a sect leader, if no one believed his words, he would lose all his dignity. Since he could not enter, why would he spend so much effort to pursue it? There must be a reason. Chu wanted to see. Qing Yuan watched for a while, then floated down from the treetops, swept through the forest, and came to the side of the pool, scaring away the wild beasts that were drinking water. The instincts of wild beasts were amazing. Qing Yuan gently released his aura, and they immediately fled without a trace. Chu narrowed his eyes slightly and found that these wild beasts were very powerful. Not only were they powerful physically, but also spiritually. They were already similar to the existence of spirit beasts. However, because they were all tigers and leopards, powerful wild beasts, people did not take them seriously, and they were a little worse than martial arts masters. Chu could see that these wild beasts had just gained sentience, and their bodies had not changed yet. However, with this trend, they would probably turn into spirit beasts in about 10 years. At that time, this valley would change even more. Qing Yuan leaned over the side of the pool, reached out to take a sip of water, and nodded in satisfaction after taking a sip. The water was sweet and clear, not something that ordinary spring water could have, not to mention this was a deep pool. Looking at the overgrown weeds around him, it was unusually dense. Because it was in this valley, it was not very conspicuous because the surrounding forest and grass were lush and abnormally lush. It did not show the strangeness of the pool. Qing Yuan took a deep breath, got up, and took out a small stone from his arms. After gently crushing it, there was a bead that burst with light inside, emitting a strange aura. Chu immediately knew that this was the aura of the void. It turned out to be a treasure like the void-breaching bead. The bead was thrown into the air by Qing Yuan, and then turned into a sun, shining brightly. Wherever the light passed, a black hole suddenly appeared in the void, like a projection of the pool below, shaking slightly. The light swayed in front of the black hole, as if sunlight was shining on the surface of the pool. Qing Yuan was overjoyed, and suddenly appeared in front of the black hole in a flash. Bang! He flew backward and fell into the pond from the sky. He struggled a few times in the pool before leaping out again and continuing to rush towards the black hole in the void. He was bounced back 10 feet away and fell into the pool again. This time, his struggle was even more difficult. Chu sighed, shook his head, and did not appear. He watched as Qing Yuan charged at the black hole again and again, only to be bounced back into the pool again and again. He was battered and exhausted, but he still did not give up. Chu Li could not help but admire his tenacity. The light slowly faded, and the dazzling bead became smaller and smaller. Finally, it disappeared, and so did the light. As the light disappeared, so did the black hole. Qing Yuan stood dejectedly in the void, staring blankly at the previous location of the black hole. He leaped forward and then appeared in another place. His expression became bitter and helpless as he let out a deep sigh. Chu Li knew that Qing Yuan's attempt had failed, and he could not enter the arcane realm. Qing Yuan thought for a moment, then took out a small stone from his pocket and crushed it. There was still a bright bead inside, exactly the same as the one that had disappeared earlier. He threw the bead into the sky, throwing it at the previous location of the black hole. However, this time, the black hole appeared in the opposite direction, right behind Qing Yuan. He leaped over and waved his hands. Bang! Qing Yuan fell into the pool again. Bang 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 bang! Qing Yuan fell into the pool again and again, his clothes wet and his hair messy. Ah! Qing Yuan was half submerged in the pool, looking up at the sky and roaring. He had clearly found the entrance to the arcane realm, but he could not enter. It was like entering a treasure mountain empty-handed. It was simply unforgivable. Chu Li shook his head and smiled, but he still did not appear. Qing Yuan finally reached into his pocket, but it was empty. He slapped the pool with hatred, and with a loud bang, the bottom of the pool exploded. A group of fish and prawns floated up, already dead. He suddenly disappeared. The next moment, Chu Li appeared in the pool, and his body swam down like a fish. In a moment, he reached the bottom of the pool and came to a small hole the size of a fist. He drilled forward and was then bounced out. The pool water behind him surged and formed a huge wave. The power that came from the small hole the size of a fist was vast and violent. If he had not been proficient in the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture, he would have been seriously injured. He unloaded all the power into his surroundings and completely released it through the pool water. The pool water seemed to be boiling and the waves surged. He nodded to himself. It seemed that his guess was right. This small hole was the entrance to the arcane realm. Fortunately, he had the heavenly demonic aerial manipulation technique, or else it would have been difficult to discover that the entrance was actually here. The entrance that Qing Yuan had discovered earlier was just a smokescreen. The arcane realm was really mysterious enough to be able to create a false entrance. Fortunately, Qing Yuan had not been able to enter, otherwise, it would have been difficult for him to survive. He approached the hole again, then his body shot out to avoid the surging power. However, this power was tyrannical and strange. He was like a fish swimming in the pool water, but he could not avoid it. He disappeared in a flash, and the next moment, he appeared in the forest in the valley. He still could not avoid this attack. Bang! He flew backward and spat out an arrow of blood in the air. He had dissipated most of the power, and the remaining power was wreaking havoc in his body. He circulated the inner force of the heavenly spirit scripture, but he found that he could not suppress this power. It was pure and gentle, and it also had the power of destruction. The heavenly spirit scripture could not suppress it. It was like using a stone to block the wind. It could block one place, but it could not block everywhere. The wind was everywhere, and it would find a gap to enter. He suddenly felt that it was familiar, so he circulated the heavenly wind technique. The originally turbulent power suddenly became as warm as the spring wind. The inner force of the heavenly wind technique merged with this inner force, and he actually felt a trace of improvement. Hence, he kept circulating the heavenly wind technique until he had quantified this power. He raised his eyebrows, and was even more certain that this was the location of the arcane realm. Only the disciples of the heavenly wind sect could enter, and they might be relying on the heavenly wind technique. As long as he circulated the heavenly wind technique, he would be able to enter. However, he recalled what Qing Yuan had said before. Even if he cultivated the martial arts of the Heavenly Wind sect, he would not be able to enter. Why did Qing Yuan still want to enter? Could it be because his Heavenly Wind technique was at a higher level so he could enter? However, things would not be so simple. He was not in a hurry to enter. He suddenly disappeared on the spot in a flash and appeared in the forest. The next moment Qing Yuan appeared. This time, Qing Yuan had brought Lu Qingxue with him. Lu Qingxue stood in the air, her white clothes fluttering in the wind. She frowned and looked around. Looking at the void, she said, "This is where the arcane realm is?" "Yes." Qing Yuan looked confident. "I'm going to go in and take a look." "How are you going to enter?" Lu Qingxue frowned. "The arcane realm is not a sect. It's not that easy to enter. I cultivate the Heavenly Wind technique." Qing Yuan smiled. "Qingxue, you stay outside. If anything goes wrong, inform me immediately." "Okay." Lu Qingxue nodded slowly. Chapter 2434. Chu Li touched his chin. He knew that the entrance that Qing Yuan wanted to enter was fake and absolutely dangerous. Logically speaking, with Qing Yuan's deduction technique and intuition, he should be able to sense the danger and avoid it. Even if the arcane realm was mysterious and could block intuition and senses, with Qing Yuan's ability, he should still be able to sense the danger. He could clearly sense it and was awe-inspiring. Qing Yuan could sense it but still moved forward because he knew that the arcane realm was dangerous and was mentally prepared. Even if he knew it was dangerous, he still had to try. This was courting death. Logically speaking, there was no need to care and let him be. However, Chu Li thought about it and decided to remind him lest Qing Yuan really died. Although Qing Yuan saw the Flying Heaven sect and him as obstacles and was ambitious to unify the heavenly demonic realm, he still owed him a favor. Moreover, he also needed Qing Yuan's help, otherwise there would be endless trouble. There were some things that he could not do, but Qing Yuan could. "Qingxue, be careful," Qing Yuan solemnly warned. Lu Qingxue waved her hand, signaling him to hurry up. Rumble Qing Yuan smiled bitterly and helplessly. He took out a stone from his bosom. After crushing it, a bright pearl appeared. Then, he threw the pearl into the sky. It was as if a sun had fallen. In the bright light, a black hole suddenly appeared. Qing Yuan smiled and turned to look at Lu Qingxue. "Do you see it?" Lu Qingxue frowned and said, "Is this really the entrance to the arcane realm? Do you feel the danger?" Qing Yuan smiled. Lu Qingxue nodded slightly. "It's too dangerous, it's better to avoid it. If there's no danger in the arcane realm, doesn't that mean everyone can enter?" Qing Yuan smiled. "Also, non-disciples of the Heavenly Wind sect will naturally feel the danger. Don't worry, I can enter with the Heavenly Wind technique." "Didn't you say it doesn't work?" Lu Qingxue frowned and scoffed. "Are you lying to Yuan Si?" "Of course I won't lie." Qing Yuan waved his hand and smiled. "However, I have other secret techniques that can completely transform into the Heavenly Wind technique and completely transform me into a disciple of the Heavenly Wind sect. There's no impurity at all, so the arcane realm can't do anything to me." Lu Qingxue looked straight at him, her eyes clear and seductive. Qing Yuan hurriedly said, "I'm proficient in a heaven and earth reversal technique that can transform all of my inner strength cultivation." "Humph, you sure have a lot of tricks up your sleeve," Lu Qingxue said disdainfully. She had seen through Qing Yuan's thoughts with a single glance. Of course, he didn't want Wu Yuanxi to know of this heaven and earth reversal technique. Thus, he would let down his guard and give up on entering the secret realm. He was truly scheming and extremely cunning. She hated these kinds of conspiracies the most. She herself was not upright enough, but she liked people who were upright, just like Wu Yuanxi, whom Chu Li disguised as. Even though he possessed peerless martial arts, He did not lose his simplicity and brightness. Qing Yuan smiled and said, I was forced into a corner. All right, I'm going in. You have to be careful. Guy get rid of boredom? Oyster rotting skeleton case governs by Mo-san? The waves recede? Me go. Qing Yuan shook his head and smiled bitterly. Don't expect Lu Qingxue to say anything good. He was about to rush towards the black hole when a clear shout suddenly came. Sect leader Qing, wait. Qing Yuan turned his head and saw that it was Chu Li. His heart tightened and he was about to act. Chu Li suddenly appeared in front of him and blocked his mouth. He shook his head and said, Sect leader Qing, you mustn't. Qing Yuan smiled bitterly and said, UNC, you want to enter the secret realm too? Chu Li said, Sect leader Qing, you're wrong this time. This is definitely not the entrance to the secret realm. Impossible. Qing Yuan said firmly, it's definitely this place. It can't be wrong. Chu Li sighed and said, this should be a trap, specially designed to trick people. Then where's the real entrance? Qing Yuan asked. Chu Li pointed to the pool. Qing Yuan looked at him in surprise. Lu Qingxue said, UNC, do you know the real entrance? She floated to Chu Li's side and stared at him with her bright eyes. Chu Li smiled. I came over to investigate and found out that this secret realm is indeed mysterious. It even knows how to camouflage. What you see is a camouflage, Sect leader Qing. If you really go in, you'll definitely die. Qing Yuan was hesitant. He originally believed in his own judgment, but he also knew that Chu Li, as a sect leader, would not speak carelessly. He was a magnanimous and upright person and would not deliberately lie just because he did not want him to enter the secret realm. Chu Li smiled and said, Sect leader Qing, why don't you take a look and see if it's real or not? He then jumped into the pool. Lu Qingxue did not hesitate to dive in and followed closely. Qing Yuan smiled bitterly and followed Chu Li to the fist-sized cave and stopped in front of it. Chu Li pointed to the fist-sized cave and his voice sounded in their minds. According to my investigation, this should be the real entrance. Qing Yuan frowned and stared at the cave with a solemn expression. Lu Qingxue was surprised. She looked at Chu Li and then at Qing Yuan, then stared at the cave. The three of them did not need to breathe through their mouths and noses. It was no different in the water than on the ground. Qing Yuan closed his eyes slightly and did not move. Lu Qingxue and Chu Li both stared at him. After a dozen breaths, Qing Yuan opened his eyes and nodded slowly. Then, he leaped up and appeared on the pool. He shook gently and his clothes were completely dry. He looked at Chu Li thoughtfully. Chu Li and Lu Qingxue were already standing in front of him. The three of them stood in the air above the pool and looked at each other. Qing Yuan sighed and said, Yuan, see, it's all thanks to you this time. He was also a person with sharp senses and a profound deduction. Soon, he deduced that this was the entrance to the arcane realm. The arcane realm could not be deduced, but the other places could be deduced. This was the place that could be used the most. He deduced the entrance and found that it was unfathomable. The fist-sized cave could not be deduced, so it was obviously the entrance to the arcane realm. Chu Li smiled and said, Sect leader Qing, there's no need to thank me. I can't just watch you die, right? Lu Qingxue snorted and glanced at Qing Yuan. If it were Qing Yuan, he might not have told her. It was very likely that he would stand in the dark and watch the show silently. He would not care about the life and death of others. Qing Yuan chuckled and said, It's rare for you to have such a pure heart, Yuan Si. I'm ashamed. He touched his forehead and smiled. Everyone is curious about the arcane realm. Yuan Si, do you want to go in and take a look? Chu Li smiled and said, Of course I do. If I can take the opportunity to ruin their wishful thinking, that would be even better. I've never heard of those old demons looking for Song Wuji. I'm afraid your wishful thinking won't work. Qing Yuan smiled and said, If you want to take care of them, you still have to do it yourself. Chu Li nodded. It seemed that these old fellows did not fall for it. Although they were muddle-headed, they were not brave. I have a way to go in. Qing Yuan pondered and said, the universal reversal technique. Chu Li raised his eyebrows and gave a fist salute with a smile. Congratulations, sect leader Qing. It would be great if you can really go in. Qing Yuan smiled and said, you don't want to cultivate this universal reversal technique? Chu Li shook his head and smiled. How can this kind of secret technique be passed down so easily? Lu Qingxue snorted and glanced at Qing Yuan. She despised him for gauging the heart of a gentleman with his mean measure. She valued Chu Li even more. As expected, he was simple and upright, a rare extraordinary man. Chapter 2435. Qing Yuan smiled. You really don't want to learn? Chu Li shook his head. Qing Yuan said, I can teach you. Chu Li smiled. Thank you for your kindness, sect leader Qing, but there's no need. I don't want to owe you such a big favor. Sigh. Qing Yuan shook his head and smiled. Isn't this favor worth saving your life? Lu Qingxue scoffed. Since Yuan Si doesn't want to learn, why don't you lessen it? Gather? So I'm in charge of Chu Yu's vinegar mulberry? Badger magnesium? Sinai Chi? Gina Toying? Fermented heart defense. Qing Yuan smiled. Don't worry, the arcane realm is very big. It won't be so easily disturbed. Let's hurry, Lu Qingxue said. Qing Yuan nodded. Since Lu Qingxue has spoken, then I'll act. Yuan Si, you really don't want to learn the heaven and earth reversal technique? No need. Chu Li smiled. Lu Qingxue glared at Qing Yuan. Qing Yuan chuckled and dived into the pool. Chu Li and Lu Qingxue followed him down again. When they were 10 meters away, they saw Qing Yuan take out another stone from his pocket, crush it, and throw it forward. The light was dazzling. The fist-sized cave suddenly expanded into a wide hole. It was a round hole with a diameter of 5 meters. Then, Qing Yuan suddenly went in. A cold light flashed and a ray of silver light shot at Qing Yuan. Qing Yuan dodged. He wanted to avoid it but could not. A wind formed a silver knife in the water, turning and slashing at Qing Yuan. Qing Yuan dodged 3 times but could not avoid it. It was getting faster and faster. He could not even avoid the last time and could only block it with his arm. The clothes he wore were secret treasured clothing, 8 Baron treasured armor. It was top-notch in deflecting and rebounding. Not to mention ordinary divine weapons, even the divine weapons wielded by top-notch masters could not break this layer of treasured clothing. He did not wear it easily because this treasured armor was old and could only be used a limited number of times. Every time he used it, it would be reduced. This time, in order to enter the arcane realm, he endured the pain of wearing this 8 Baron treasured armor. Chu Li frowned as he saw the silver knife easily pass through. Qing Yuan's arm did not hinder it at all. After passing through his arm, it continued to slash at his chest. Fortunately, Qing Yuan dodged it. The silver knife brushed past his chest, only cutting open his clothes and revealing his white belly. Qing Yuan's right forearm fell to the bottom of the pool. With a flick of his left hand, he pressed down on his right arm and circulated his power. The silver saber behind him silently appeared again, and this time, it wasn't just one silver saber, but more than a dozen. Qing Yuan circulated his energy to move his arm, causing his forearm to regrow as he dodged. Seeing that there was no way to avoid these silver sabers, he immediately disappeared into the pool in a flash. In the next moment, he was already above the pool. Chu Li and Lu Qingxue's expressions changed slightly as they disappeared in a flash. When they realized that the silver knife had also disappeared, they knew that something was wrong and appeared above the pool. Qing Yuan sensed that something was wrong. His surroundings were occupied by invisible forces. Even the sinister winds in the water earlier were silent and traceless without the appearance of the pool water. Yet, they were everywhere. Qing Yuan had nowhere to hide. He wanted to disappear, but he found that he couldn't move through the void. He hurriedly took out the void-breaking bead and crushed it. Swoosh! His right arm fell to the ground, accompanied by the shining void-breaking bead. He picked up his right arm and was about to leave when his left arm left his body at the same time. Both his left and right arms fell to the ground. When he appeared in the distance, his arms were empty and he became an armless man. It looked very strange. His face was gloomy and he disappeared again. The next moment, Chu Li picked up his two arms and appeared beside Qing Yuan. He handed them over, his body motionless, his eyes flashing with blue brilliance. Bang, 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 bang! Continuous explosions sounded around him, like rolling thunder in spring. Qing Yuan only felt that his surroundings were relaxed and his whole body was extremely relaxed. He could not help but let out a long sigh of relief. He looked down at his arms, which were already connected to his body. Endless inner energy was unblocking his blood vessels. Lu Qingxue appeared in front of him, a faint fragrance lingering around her. She took out a spirit pill and stuffed it into his mouth. "Thank you, Qingxue." Qing Yuan smiled. Lu Qingxue scoffed. "Where's your ability?" She did not expect this arcane realm to be so dangerous. This invisible force was really scary. She knew Qing Yuan's cultivation level, which was 2 levels higher than hers, but he was still in such a difficult situation. If not for Yuan Si, his life would be in danger, and it would be the same for her. Both of their lives would be at stake. Qing Yuan shook his head and smiled bitterly. What a heavenly wind! The heavenly wind arcane realm lives up to its name. Chu Li already knew the wonders of the heavenly wind, and the god-punishing thunder sword happened to be able to restrain it. The heavenly wind was extremely keen and soft, and accompanied by spiritual energy. The god-punishing thunder sword was extremely young and was condensed from his spiritual energy along with thunder, so it could restrain the heavenly wind. Amidst the muffled thunder, the heavenly wind gradually dissipated. Chu Li let out a sigh of relief. He did not expect this arcane realm to be so powerful. The heavenly wind was so strange that it could chase people and kill them. Moreover, it snowballed and became stronger and stronger. In the end, there was no escape and only death awaited. Qing Yuan consumed a spirit pill and used a strange secret skill to help him move. He quickly caught it with his arm and waved it a few times. He smiled. Fortunately, the cut was round and there was no hidden force left. That's why it was so easy to recover. Lu Qingxue scoffed. It's all thanks to Yuan Si's help. Qing Yuan fist saluted and smiled at Chu Li. Thank you, Yuan Si, for saving my life again. Chu Li shook his head. I didn't expect this arcane realm to be so dangerous. He actually had the intention of letting Qing Yuan take the lead and figure out the actual situation. That was why he did not learn the heaven and earth reversal technique. The name of this secret skill had the same name as a formation that he had learned in the past. Although the name was the same, it was not the same thing. Qing Yuan said, I didn't expect it to be so dangerous. Only he knew how powerful the heavenly wind was. It was the first time that the peripheral treasure armor was useless. Chu Li sighed. How can we go in when it's so dangerous? Qing Yuan shook his head. It shouldn't be so dangerous. I was wrong. The method was wrong. Chu Li asked, Sect Leader Qing, have you found the right method? I'll try. Qing Yuan said. Lu Qingxue frowned. You still want to try? Qing Yuan said, how can we give up now that we've come this far? You guys should retreat further to avoid being implicated. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Lu Qingxue did not say anything. Qing Yuan took out a cloth bag from his bosom and took out 2 stones and 3 dull bead. He stuffed them all into Lu Qingxue's hands. Keep them for me. Use them yourself in case I don't come back. What are these? Lu Qingxue frowned and took the cloth bag. Qing Yuan smiled. Some treasures. I was going to bring them into the arcane realm, but it seems like they're the source of trouble. Lu Qingxue pondered and nodded lightly before putting them into her sleeve. The three of them came to the pool again. When they arrived at the fist-sized hole, Qing Yuan turned his head and smiled. There should be no problem this time. He glided to the hole and approached it step by step. His body was tense but his feet did not stop moving. Chu Li nodded to himself. He sensed that Qing Yuan was circulating the heavenly wind technique. Although it was only the 5th level, it was very pure. As he approached the hole, the heavenly wind technique circulated faster and faster. Then, without a sound, there was no more heavenly wind at the hole. Instead, it grew larger. Qing Yuan turned his head and smiled at the two. He stepped into the hole and disappeared. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.